Hello everyone, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. The God of Shinobi. What if Naruto awakened the Thousand Eyes? Part 1. Furthermore, I propose, Hiyashi had to resist the urge to rub his temples in frustration. A frequent battle he had whenever a meeting of the clan elders was held. Several times a week at minimum. He looked to his twin, who gave him a well-hidden sympathetic glance. Kami above, he didn't know what he would do without his younger brother's advice and support. Hizashi, as far as the clan head was concerned, he was better suited for the role. But old dogmas and bad timing had robbed him of that chance. Hiyashi turned his attention back to what the elder was saying. It was yet another attempt to carry out more oppressive acts against the branch house of the Hyuga clan. Luckily, he and some of the more sensible members of the Elder Council were quick to shoot it down. The elder sat back down, grumbling something about being too lenient with the branch family. Hiyashi stood up to address the assembled council. Are there any other proposals that members of this esteemed council would like to bring forth? He asked, hoping to bring to a swift end the tiring meeting. He gazed around the chamber, seeing that none of the elders were going to say anything. Then, in that case, we shall call an end to this gathering of the Hyuga clan council. He announced, eager to be done the day's proceedings. Brother. The voice of Hizashi gained the attention of the council. Everyone looked to where he was sitting. Do you not have something you wish to announce to the council? He asked. Before the elders turned their heads to him, a small but brief smile had flashed across his lips. Their little plan was about to be put in motion. Thank you, dear brother, for reminding me. You have an announcement for us. One of the elders spoke. Why was this not brought to our attention sooner? It had little bearing on what this meeting of the council had on its agenda. He explained. It would have distracted us from the proceedings. As such, I thought it best to leave it be until the conclusion of the meeting. The elder nodded, accepting the explanation. Very well, what is it you wish to tell us? He asked. In 3 weeks, our clan heiress Hyuga Hinata and our clan ward Uzumaki Naruto will be attending the Shinobi Academy. The atmosphere of the chamber noticeably became colder. I can see why you would want our heiress to attend the academy. The elder said carefully. Despite her shortcomings, she is a capable heiress and would show the village the strength of the main house family as Neji has shown the strength of the branch house. That we can accept. Those shortcomings being that his daughter was considered to be too gentle and kind-hearted by several of the elders. However, Hiyashi repressed a grimace at the man's tone. He knew that this would be the hardest part. Our young ward is another question. Are you certain he is ready? We can always let him continue his training here and enroll him in the final year of the academy. Even now, 2 years after the fact, some of the elders were still wary of Naruto. Not because they believed him to be the Kyuubi incarnate. That was a trapping that most of the civilian population fell into. Instead, they did not wish to deal with the stigma that came with housing the village pariah. Though that position was in question now, as word that the supposed demon child had saved the Hyuga heiress suffering severe injuries in the process, a fact that seemed to be validated when the clan took him in. While there were still many who held the child in contempt, there were now many who held him in a different light. Despite their reservations, the elders had agreed to take Naruto in as a clan ward. It would be a great dishonor to the whole clan if they did not repay their debt to the boy. It didn't hurt Hiyashi's case that once Naruto established a new clan of wielders of a new and powerful Kekkei Genkai, that clan would have close ties to the Hyuga clan. Politics sometimes they were good for something. I am certain, Hiyashi responded firmly. If he is to establish a new Uzumaki clan here Konoha as he wishes to do, then he will need the support of not just our clan but others as well. Ideally, the most prominent clans, such as the Uchiha, Aburame, Inuzuka, Akamichi, Yamanaka, and Nara clans. As it is known, the future heads of these clans will be attending the academy this year. While he is already acquainted with them, it is wise to have young Uzumaki deepen his relationships with them in the hopes that he will gain each of their clan's support. He explained to the elders, knowing that they would not be able to argue against his point. If his skills you are worried about, you need not be concerned. He has already demonstrated to be capable in his own right. I have no doubt he will hold a high ranking in his class for the duration of the academy. Yet another point they could not argue against. The tutors they assigned to him had quickly learned that the boy was eager to learn, absorbed much of what they said. It was hard to say how intelligent he truly was, as it was quickly discovered that Naruto did not learn things like most people. He was what is known as a kinesthetic learner, meaning that he learned more by doing than through a lecture. Once his learners had adjusted to his learning style, the boy was quick to flourish, proving that he was more intelligent than rumors had to lead most to believe. It should also be noted that he has kept an even pace with my son, Neji, in several sparring matches. Hisashi spoke up, a boy whom this very council is lauded as a prodigy of the Hyuga clan. Inwardly Hisashi was smiling like a fox. His brother had brought up a valid point that the elders couldn't dismiss. The elders looked to each holding a silent conversation and consensus. Very well, Hisashi. One of them spoke. We will allow this, but we expect the two to hold a high ranking in their class and they not bring shame to the Hyuga clan. He said harshly. Smiling, Hisashi respectfully bowed to the elders. I thank this council for its wisdom. I assure you my daughter and our clan ward will bring nothing but glory to the Hyuga name. He said. We expect nothing less. Furthermore, on the morning of their first day in the academy, we wish to address them. The elder requested, read, demanded. Of course, Hisashi said, lifting himself. If there are no more questions, then I call this meeting to an end. He dismissed the elders. Once the last of the elders left the chamber, sliding the door shut behind them, did Hisashi allow a tired sigh to escape. Dealing with the clan elders was always a tiring affair. A hand appeared in his line of vision. Looking up, he saw it was coming from Hisashi, giving him a knowing smile. Brother, you alright? He asks. I'm just tired, Hisashi. He said, taking his brother's hand and getting up. Tired? The younger twin queried, a mischievous glint in his eye. It is not even late in the day. A small smile graced Hiyashi's lips. To paraphrase our young ward, dealing with old windbags does that to you. He said, receiving a small chuckle from his twin. Come, brother. I think it's time that we inform the children of the changes to their daily lives. Agreeing with his brother, Hisashi stepped alongside Hisashi. The two stepped out of the council chamber and entered the hallways of the main compound. Navigating their way through the compound, occasionally greeted by another Hyuga, the two brothers made their way to the Hyuga gardens in the center of the compound. Stepping out into the garden, Hisashi was greeted with a sight that always brought a genuine smile. Close to one of the pounds, two 7-year-olds were playing a game of ninja. One was a girl with dark blue hair and pupil-less lavender eyes, which distinguished her as a Hyuga, his daughter Hinata. The other was a boy with bright blonde hair that seemed to spike in every direction. On his checks were 3 birthmarks shaped like whiskers. His most distinguishing characteristic was that his eyes were covered by a dark orange blindfold. The ward of the Hyuga clan, Uzumaki Naruto, an energetic boy that brought life to wherever he went. Certainly, he made life in the Hyuga compound less dull. Contrary to what they were seeing, Hisashi knew the boy wasn't blind and could see them, albeit not with the eyes he was born with. The boy stopped in his tracks, turned to face the Hyuga twins, and waved at them before he resumed his game with Hinata. Close by, the two brothers could see another pair of figures watching the children play. One was a boy about a year older than them who was the spitting image of his father, Hisashi. A cold expression covered his face. Sitting on a bench behind him, her belly heavily swollen with child, was Hiyashi's love-and wife, Hitomi. A stunningly beautiful woman that appeared to be an adult version of Hinata, her dark blue hair hung below her shoulders. Hisashi and his brother walked towards the watching pair. Noticing them approaching, the boy turned to face them and bowed. Hisashi-sama, Oto-san. He greeted the men. Raise Neji, Hisashi said to the boy. There is no need to bow to me, and please just call me uncle. There are no elders here to reprimand you. Neji rose. That would not be appropriate, Hiyashi-sama. He said coldly. The clan head wanted to shake his head in frustration. Ever since the Hyuga affair, as it became known as 2 years ago, Neji had changed from the friendly and gentle boy he was to a cold, unfeeling child who held a deep-seated grudge against the main house of the Hyuga clan. His daughter most of all. He knew why Neji became like this. The elders had not taken kindly to Hazashi's failure to protect Hinata. They had punished him severely and in front of his son, no less. Yet another reason for Hiyashi to get rid of the Elder Council once he could. Giving up on the matter, Hiyashi turned his gaze to Hitomi, who was giving him a warm smile. He walked towards her and took her hand and placed a kiss on it. My beautiful Haim, he greeted her. How has your day been? He asked, taking a seat next to her. Judging by your appearance, I would say better than yours. She replied. How the elders take the news? She asked, an edge of worry in her voice. Better than I had expected. He answered. They did try to put up an objection to Naruto attending the academy so soon. But the points my brother and I brought up in his favor put an end to that. That's good to hear, she said, looking back at the playing children. Hiyashi's gaze followed her. His eyes settled on the blonde-haired boy. He was standing protectively over Hinata as though he was facing down a monster or villain that wanted to harm her. He deserves to be around kids his age. He heard his wife. To be able to make friends and have people he can rely on. Hinata, I think, would benefit from it too. That's right. With Hinata in the academy, the elders wouldn't be able to exert as much influence on her as they did now. While she was doing well to hold her position as the heiress to the clan, Naruto, thanked Kami above, was a big help in that regard. The elders were not entirely impressed with her and wanted to push her harder to excel. Hiyashi believed in his daughter and knew she had the potential to become one of the best that the Hyuga had to offer. What she needed was time and patience to grow into her own. At the academy, she would have that chance. With Naruto at her side, she would blossom like a flower. Indeed, it will be good for them. I believe they might even thrive there. He said, expressing his thoughts. I only hope the elders won't pressure them any more than they already do. His wife said. He was about to answer when he saw her place her hand on her belly. HMPH. She winced. Are you all right, my dear? He asked her about to get up. The doctors did say that this would be about the time that she was due. What if her water had just broken? Was there a complication? He felt Hitomi grab his arm and nudged him down. It's all right, Hiyashi. She reassured him. The baby just kicked, is all. The little thing turning out to be something of a firecracker. She said jokingly. Hiyashi calmed himself, knowing he had started to overreact again. Sorry dear. He apologized to his wife. He heard her chuckle under her breath. Honestly, I don't know who's more eager about the baby. Me or you, she said, placing her hand on her stomach, a loving gaze centered on it. Now that I think about it, you were just like this when I had Hinata. She looked back to him, a nostalgic expression clear on her face. Between you and me, I think you were the happiest when she was born. The Hyuga patriarch hid a small blush at the memory. He remembers the surge of overwhelming emotions when he first saw his baby girl, tenfold when he held her in his arms. The overwhelming desire to protect her from all harm, to hold and cherish her. He remembered the tears that streamed down his cheeks and the way his father looked at him. On the surface was disapproval at the display of emotion, but underneath, he could see the man's care and understanding. He looked to where his daughter was and knew that those feelings were still as strong as ever. He looked back to his wife, his eyes locked onto her swollen stomach. He reached his hand out. Mind if I? He asked. He saw her nod. Go ahead. His hand landed on her lamp. Initially, he didn't feel anything, then he felt something stir from behind the layers of skin and fat. A jolt of excitement raced through his being. His child boy or girl was indeed a lively one as he felt a kick. Hitomi winced again. As I said, she's a little firecracker. She said. I can tell, Hiyashi responded before his mind picked on what she said. He queried. Had she went ahead and had one of the doctors check? He saw her smile at him. Call it a mother's intuition. She places her hand over Hiyashi's and remains content just to sit there and feel the movements of their future child. He didn't want to show his other concerns about Hitomi's pregnancy. Hinata had gone swimmingly well, only showing the usual signs such as morning sickness and mood swings. This one had looked to be the same in the first few months, then somewhere in the second trimester, things had started to go wrong. At first, it seemed like she was just having a particularly bad case of morning sickness and fatigue, worrisome but not unheard of in some pregnancies. It's when those symptoms persisted much longer than they should have been when they began to worry that something was wrong. It culminated when she collapsed suddenly. She had been fortunate that a branch member had been close by to catch her. Otherwise, severe harm could come to her and the baby when she fell down the stairs leading to the compounds on the second floor. Since then, the doctors could not find anything wrong with her and the baby, no matter how they checked. Only for one reason or another, Hitomi was getting weaker as her pregnancy continued. There were times when she couldn't even get out of bed. There was growing concern that she may not survive childbirth. Even Hinata and Naruto started to show signs of worry. Sometimes he would catch Hinata sneak concerned glances at her mother and Naruto as well. Hitomi had told him that on days when she was feeling especially bad, she felt like someone was watching her. Before his worry was piqued, she had told him she didn't feel any maliciousness in the apparent unseen gaze, only a sense of worry. Hiyashi made a mental note to discuss that with Naruto after the child had come. Seeing her here in the garden had both brought happiness to him and concerned him. At this point, she needed all the rest she could and conserve all her strength. In that case, he said, wanting to move away from his dark thoughts. How about we name our youngest daughter Hanabi when she does finally decide to come? He suggested as the name came to mind. He saw Hitomi purse her lips with her free hand, putting on a thinking expression. Hyuga Hanabi. She turned her head to Hiyashi, flashing him a closed-eye smile. That is a nice ring to it, she said. Then he saw a somewhat mischievous glint in her pale eyes. What if I'm wrong and she turns out to be a he? She asked. Smiling back at his beloved and knowing the woman was trying to trip him up, he spoke. We'll still name him Hanabi. He answered he doubted it would come to that. Hitomi had predicted that Hinata would be a girl. Before the whole mess that was the Kyuubi attack, she had guessed Naruto's gender as well. She even guessed what Neji would be. She was 3 for 3, and 4 probably wouldn't be different. Either way, he or she, they'll always be our little firecracker. He felt a strong kick in her stomach. HMPH. It seems the baby agrees with you. Hitomi said. Hiyashi removed his hand gently from her stomach and wrapped his fingers around her free hand. Of course, she does. He whispered to her. And when she gets there, she'll be showered with all the love that she can handle. I imagine that Hinata is quite eager to have a little sister. He saw Hitomi's smile broaden. I think she'll make for a wonderful big sister. A small laugh could be heard from under her breath. Now that I think about Naruto-kun is rather eager about the baby too. You know how he is around the younger Hyuga children. Much to everyone's surprise, Naruto, the spontaneous and trouble-making child, was very good when handling younger children. Showing a degree of patience and understanding that seemed uncharacteristic of the blonde. Then once one thought about it, it started to make sense. Naruto had been alone for the first 5 years of his life, and because of his status as the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, most parents would pull away their children when he got too close. They still did sometimes on the occasions he was out of the compound. The orphanage, too, had isolated him from the other children, a fact that the Sandaime Hokage did not take kindly to. Last he heard, the former head caretaker had to leave Fire Country to find a job. Considering those facts, it made sense that the young Uzumaki would be eager to be around other kids and even learn how to handle those younger than him. Because of this, the boy treated the younger Hyuga children with great care, playing games of ninja with them or regaling them with fantastical tales. He would even turn a blind eye to whatever mischievous acts he caught them doing, more often joining them much to the elders' chagrin. Yes, Hyugas were not, in the words of one Sume Inuzuka, born with sticks up their asses. In their younger years were about as rambunctious and mischievous as most other children. Most of the younger Hyuga children had taken quite a liking to him, and even some of the older ones as well. Thinking about that, it's not too hard imagining him acting like a doting older brother. Hitomi rambled on. I can already see our little girl calling him Onichan. Kami above, the fit that the elders would have if they heard that. It was bad enough that he was acting as a negative influence on the future generations of Hyuga. But a possible heir to the position of clan head. They would not like that one bit. They already consider Hinata a lost cause in that regard. He knew that the elders were hoping to mold his second child in what they thought of as the ideal clan head. He wasn't about to let that happen. While he did have the clan's future in its best interest, he wasn't about to let others dictate the path his children would take. From the moment Hinata was born, he decided that his children's future was theirs to determine. He is good with kids, isn't he? Hiyashi commented, looking at the blonde in question as he seemed to animatedly talk to Hinata. She had a content smile as she listened. He is. He heard Hitomi answer. I can easily imagine him being a caring father in the future. I think Hinata will be quite pleased with that. It was no secret that their daughter had a crush on her blonde-haired savior. Being apparent as early as a week after the kidnapping, when both had caught her shyly following the boy around the compound. Though to their amusement, the boy was unaware of the girl's feelings for him, often mistaking her intense blushes as her catching a fever, and exasperated when he tried holding his hand out to her forehead. It wasn't hard to conclude that the boy had inherited his mother's denseness. Hiyashi remembered why it took Kushina and Minato so long to hook up was because Kushina would always mistake Minato's advances as simple gestures of friendship or wouldn't register them. It took a straight-up love confession, and no, not one where he said, I like you, please date me. His words had been word for word, Uzumaki Kushina, I am in love with you and want to marry you someday. So please, will you be my girlfriend? That had been the first time he and Hitomi had seen the woman's face turn red as her hair without anger being involved. It took about 5 minutes before the Uzumaki woman could have coherent thought, and a bit longer for her to realize what had happened. A week later, the two had been happily dating, and a year later, they were married. I just hope that it doesn't take him as long as his mother did, Hitomi commented dryly. I never did let that woman live it down. She giggled out. Hiyashi felt a smile tug at the corners of his lips. At the very least, we won't have to worry about grandkids for a while. He responded. I may be eager for it, but I'm not ready to hear myself be called grandpa for at least another 2 or 3 decades. He heard his wife giggle some more, a beautiful sound to his ears. I wholeheartedly agree. These two need time to grow more as people before they're ready to be parents. Their childhoods are already going to be cut short as it is with them going into the world of Shinobi. She said, her voice turning somber. It's best that any such thoughts be pushed back. Hiyashi knew that his wife was worried about the children and shared in them. In the world of Shinobi, there was no such thing as innocence. It was a dark place that forced its denizens to take actions and see things that would haunt them in their sleep. It was a world of deceit, blood, and darkness that at times seemed to know no moral bounds. A part of him wants to keep Naruto and Hinata out of the shinobi life. But he knew from the moment they had been born, they would be forced into that world. Hinata was the heiress of a clan that held a powerful and coveted Kekkei Genkai. Naruto was the son of one of the most powerful shinobi in recent history and the Jinchuriki to the Kyuubi no Kitsune, the strongest of the Biju. Without their knowledge or say, their fates had been decided. The two parents heard a soft grunt. They saw that Hazashi was standing close by. Neji was close behind him. If you don't mind me interrupting, he said, pointing to the playing children. But I believe it is time that we called Hinata-sama and Naruto-kun over. To tell them about the change in their daily schedules. Hiyashi smiled inwardly, glad that his brother was taking their minds off such things. Their fates had been decided, but it did not mean that they still could not shape their futures in ways that would be to their liking. As an adult, it was his duty to see that the children would have the tools they needed to take the future into their own hands. You're quite right, brother, Hiyashi responded. I think we delayed this long enough. He faced Hitomi. Would you do the honors? He asked her. He saw her give him a gentle smile. I would be honored, Hiyashi-kun. Looking at the children again. For a brief moment, he thought he saw a glimpse of the future. An older Naruto looking so much like his father wearing a familiar set of robes and Hinata grown looking every bit like the beauty he knew she would be. They were close together shoulder to shoulder and gazing down at a bundle cradle in Hinata's arms. Both of their faces were ones of pure bliss. It was a serene image that brought untold joy to Hiyashi's heart. Then just as quick, it was there, it was gone, and he could see the children were approaching them. Hiyashi blinked, then shook his head to clear his mind. What was that? Had Kami seen fit to grant him a brief glimpse of the future? Or had it just been an odd trick of the light, something he had imagined? The memory of the image was quickly fading and already was too hazy to make out any details. He decided he was imagining things. Yet, he still felt an odd sense of hope. He knew that even if their roads on life took them down to some very dark places, they would have each other to hold on to, and when they reached the end of the road, a glimmering light would be waiting for them. The children reached them. Yes, Otosan and Kasan, Hinata said. We have an announcement for you too. Several hours later. The academy. Hinata thought to herself. I wonder if the people there will be nice. Will the other kids be nice too? She wasn't surprised that she would be attending the academy this year. The rumors she heard around the compound said that the heirs to several major clans would be attending this year. It stood to reason that her clan would be compelled to enter her, if only as a gesture of obligation. She was entering for political reasons, at least that's how the elders viewed it. Looking at her father and mother as they talked to her and Naruto, even at her uncle Hazashi. She knew they had other reasons for the two to enter. Reasons that were more benevolent aside from the need to showcase the power of the clan. Slap. Thunk. Thud. Her lavender eyes returned to the sparring match in front of her. She saw Naruto just barely shifting out of the way of an open palm aimed at his shoulder. Naruto's opponent Neji moved his other palm for another attack. This time Naruto blocked it with his arm, then moved his head out of the way of another palm strike. With his free hand, he aimed at Neji's chest. Neji was quick to react and flawlessly deflected the attack. Standing outside the training arena was an older Hyuga. He didn't have the caged bird seal on his forehead, indicating his status as a member of the main house. He was watching the match carefully. Occasionally she would see the man give a nod of approval. He was not the only one watching, though, or rather not the only thing watching the spare. Up in the air and around the training arena was a strange sight to outsiders, and truthfully some insiders. Inside the arena, hanging at a height that none of the combatants could reach, were several pairs of eyes. About 5 pairs to Hinata's counting, for a total of 10 eyes gazing at the spare. Though Hinata knew that there were more watching out of sight. This was Naruto's power, his Kekkei Genkai. He called it the Futogen, meaning the levitating theft eye, a description that aptly describes its main ability. That was to steal the eyes of others and allow Naruto to see through them. She had first learned of Naruto's new talent sometime after her return to the compound on the night of her kidnapping, a night she still had nightmares about from time to time. To say she was surprised, even a bit freaked out by the pair of floating eyes that hung around the boy responsible for saving her, would be an understatement. She quickly grew used to the sight. Even as more eyes were added to Naruto's collection. Even with the kind reassurances of Naruto, Hinata still blamed herself for that night. Had she not been so weak, Naruto would have never lost his true eyes, and her uncle would have not been punished so harshly. In another time and life, she might have let the consequences of her weakness drag her down. But thanks to Naruto's kind words and determination to grow stronger, and with the support of her father, mother, and uncle, she instead let it become a driving force for her to become stronger. To overcome her weakness so that those she cared about would never come to harm again. It wasn't easy going in sparring matches. She still found herself hesitating to take advantage of openings. The elders still thought that she was too soft-hearted to be clan heiress. To top it off, Neji would take whatever chance he had to belittle her efforts, claiming she could not defy her fate. He didn't used to like that. Before the kidnapping, he had a kind, gentle, even supportive of her. But after that night, he had become cold and at times hostile to her. He had developed a fatalistic view of the world that seemed almost impossible to break him of. She knew why he became like this. The elders had punished his father, her uncle, harshly. They did it right in front of Neji, too, as a lesson to him. Failure was not to be tolerated, especially when it could jeopardize the future of the clan. They had made her watch, too, claiming that it would serve to remind her of the branch family's station in the clan. The sight of her uncle collapsing into a heap convulsing with pain as his seal was activated horrified her to no end and added to the nightmares she had on bad nights. Had it not been for her father's timely intervention when he caught wind of the disciplinary action the elders were taking, Neji's father might have died that day. Instead, he had been confined to bed recovery for over a week. Since then, Neji had changed, becoming the person he was today. It saddens her to know that he held her in such contempt and blamed her for his father's punishment, and to some degree, she agreed with him. She imagined that without Naruto, she would have taken her cousin's change in person and hostility towards her far more severely. That is enough, the Hyuga instructor said, taking the girl out of her thoughts. She glances back at the combatants. Both Naruto and Neji were face to face, arms extended out into an attack. But even from here, she could tell who the winner was. While Naruto had his palm to Neji's jaw, the former had his to the latter's chest about where his heart was. Had it been a real fight, while Neji might suffer a knockout blow, he would have dealt a fatal blow to his opponent. A Juken-powered blow would have caused the heart to stop. Both fighters relaxed their stances and stepped away from each other, giving room to breathe. It was clear that both boys were worn from spare, sweat dripping from their faces, and splashing to the floor. Both were short of breath. However, Neji's breathing was heavier than Naruto's, a fact that his pride would never allow him to admit. Now bow before your opponent to show respect. The Hyuga man instructed. There was a moment where the two simply stared at each other, contempt and arrogance in the eyes of one and annoyance in the other. Then both boys did as the man said. They straightened their postures and bowed to show their respect to each other, non-existent as it was. Rise, the instructor said, walking to the boys. Hinata got up from her seat and made her way to Naruto. Now tell me, Neji-san, why did you have trouble gaining victory over Uzumaki-san? He asked the young prodigy. Even though your form was flawless as it is always. Hinata saw Neji bit back his initial response. It wasn't something that the instructor would have been able to notice. Even though my strikes were precise, Uzumaki-san has always proved to be a stubborn foe to put down. He is willing to take a hit if it means he can get an opening. This is compounded by the fact that he possesses a level of stamina and endurance that I am not accustomed to dealing with. The instructor nodded his head. That's right, Neji-san. Though you forgot to mention that Uzumaki-san's style of taijutsu is made to capitalize on his higher-than-average stamina and endurance. The Hyuga instructor explained. There will come a time and place in your career as a Konoha shinobi that you may come face to face with an opponent or opponents that are just as stubborn as Uzumaki-san, no offense. None took, Naruto commented, getting a small giggle from Hinata. As I was saying, the man resumed his lecture. In the same vein, those opponents may be shinobi that have been given a mission of such high importance that surrender, or retreat will not be an option to them. In that scenario, You must be ready to do what must be done to defeat them, including going for a killing strike when the opportunity presents itself. Hinata felt something drop in her stomach as the man mentioned the possibility of killing. It was a reality that Hinata knew she would have to accept if she was to become a strong kunoichi of the village. She saw Naruto shift uncomfortably. Even Neji showed signs of being disturbed by the subject. I will keep that in mind, he said, keeping his voice even, but Hinata could hear the unease. Strangely, it was a comfort to her to know that even Neji did not relish the idea of taking a life. It showed that the boy she once knew was still in there somewhere. The Hyuga man seemed to detect the children's unease at his advice and moved away from the subject. I would recommend that you find a way to improve your stamina and endurance. That way, you can last longer in a fight. There are some exercises I can show you for that. Thank you, sensei. I will consider your advice. Neji responded. The instructor nodded his head and turned to face Naruto. Now, Uzumaki, as you may have heard, you did well not to yield to your opponent and to wear them down. He began his praise. In the line of duty, you may find yourself in a situation where giving up is not an option. It may be a mission of great importance, or you may find yourself face to face against a foe who is determined to kill you with no means to escape. The latter was a frightening thought. Hinata did not like killing, but she liked the idea of someone else trying to kill her or Naruto even less. In some cases, you may even find yourself having to stay behind to distract a pursuing force long enough for your teammates to escape. If this had been a real-life fight to the death, while you may have been defeated, your comrades would be at a safe distance, and your opponent left in no condition to continue the pursuit. Hinata saw a small blush appear around Naruto's whiskered checks. Something he was quick to hide with a toothy smile. Thanks, sensei, he proclaimed proudly. Hinata smiled to herself, finding the blonde's hidden bashfulness to be cute. Then she felt her face become warm as she caught onto her thoughts. Did I just think that Naruto-kun was cute? She thought, embarrassed. She was glad that Naruto couldn't read minds. Otherwise, she may die of embarrassment. That said, the man continued, while you may find yourself in such scenarios more often than not, you won't. I would advise that if you ever come face to face against a foe who is vastly more powerful than you or an insurmountable obstacle, that you find a means of retreat and withdraw. Naruto frowned at the suggestion. He never did like the idea of giving up. He was too stubborn at times. Hinata placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Started for a second, he turned his to face the shy girl. Behind him, she could see a pair of eyes gazing at her. She directed her attention at Naruto, his face showing surprise at her gesture. He's alright Naruto-kun. Please say don't be reckless. She said to him, her checks lighting her stutters. She never liked that part of herself, even when Naruto told her it was okay, and he even found it cute. A statement that had induced a fainting spell in her and caused the boy to worry about her well-being for several minutes. Her mother still teased her about it to this day. She thought of it as another sign of her weakness. It seemed that the blonde-haired boy understood her worry as he nodded an okay at her. Early in his life as a ward to the Hyuga clan, it became clear that Hinata had a calming effect on the boy. He was still a very active child and had a stubborn streak a mile wide, but at least with her around, he would sit still long enough for him to think some things through. He faced the instructor again. Alright, I'll think about it, he said. The Hyuga man shot Hinata an appreciative glance. That is good to hear. You show much determination, young Uzumaki-san. I believe that you will make for a fine shinobi of Konoha one day. The elders were wise to agree to Hiyashi-sama's proposal to take you in as a ward of the clan. Naruto's smile returned. That because they know how totally awesome I am, he said with enthusiasm. The instructor gave Naruto a small smile. Perhaps, he responded. Now then, I noticed that were some odd changes to your taijutsu style. It seemed like you were trying to predict your opponent's next move and some limited success. He looked directly at one of the pairs of floating eyes. If I had to hazard a guess, you were trying to integrate the use of Ufudogen more into your fighting style. Weren't you? Naruto scratched the back of his head as a pair of eyes floated down towards him. Yay, it was. He said. It was Hinata-chan's idea. He said, patting her back. Her blush intensified at the attention she was receiving. Well, yousc. She began, her stutter worsening. I was inking since that Naruto can control several eyes at the same time and sctth through all of them at once. I thought maybe he could use that to his advantage by using them to surround his opponents and watch them from multiple angles. Even ones that normally would not be possible. I thought that it might make it easier for him to predict how they would move. As she explained, her stutter had steadily diminished without her knowing. I also thought that he could keep some of them cloaked. A power that Naruto had discovered early on with his Futogen was that they could turn invisible. She heard the Sandaime mutter something about bending the light around them. She didn't understand it all as Naruto discussed it with the elderly Hokage. What she did get was that he could make it harder to see his eyes than they already were. Naruto had liked the idea of cloaking some of his eyes while fighting. If only to move them around unseen. He had also told her that he would only cloak them partially. He explained from experience that if he turned them completely invisible, they would see complete darkness, as no light would be reaching them. A partial cloaking would still enable them to receive light and thereby still see everything around them. It would just require a refined control over his Futogen. I see. The Hyuga instructor said, rubbing his chin. That would make for a most interesting fighting style. It is no Sharingan, but your Futogen, if trained properly, can provide you with a tool to analyze and predict the movements of your opponents. I would suggest that you look further into it. That said, your technique, while strong, still needs to be worked on. There were points in the spare that your opponent could have capitalized on had he been allowed to use the full extent of his abilities. I recommend 1 extra hour dedicated to katas to improve muscle memory. Naruto nodded at the man's suggestion. Now then, if you don't have any questions, he said, looking at the children, each giving a shake of their heads. Good. We are done here for today. I will be sending a report to Hiyashi-sama of your training. I am certain that he will be pleased by all 3 of your progress. Dismissed. Bowing respectfully to the instructor, the 3 children left the dojo room, entering a hallway. Naruto was walking next to Hinata, a warm smile on his face. A few steps behind them was Neji, a blank stare on his face. Hinata knew, though, that there was contempt behind his eyes directed at her. Neji-san, can't you see that I only want to help you? She thought to herself sadly. Naruto picked up on her depressed mood. Hinata-chan, you okay? She heard him ask. She looked at him, seeing that he was giving her a concerned expression. Even the eyes that were floating around him showed emotion. It was funny how a bunch of disembodied eyes could give off emotions, a part of her wondered if it was some trick of the mind. She smiled. Looking at her savior turned crush always seemed to calm her. She shoved aside her thoughts on Neji, knowing that there was nothing she could do about him for now. I'm alright, Naruto-kun. I'm just a little tired. She said. The boy looks at her questioningly for a few seconds. The worry melted away and was replaced with a bright smile. I guess that you do look a little tired. She knew that the boy was glaring daggers at Neji with one of his pair of eyes. The two had a difficult relationship almost the moment the two had met. Naruto didn't like how Neji's fatalistic attitude, thinking him to be an arrogant prick, as he often put it. Nor did he like how her cousin would belittle her. The boy was, to both her embarrassment and joy, highly protective of her. Still, did you see how awesome I was back there? I had that jerk on the ropes. He boasted, going into detail on the spare even though she was there to see most of it. Hinata always enjoyed the tales he would spin off about his daily activities, often exaggerating the details. Making even the most mundane activity seem like an adventure fraught with excitement and danger. Uzumaki-san, I would advise that you not spread such fictional stories. They both heard Neji say coldly. Hinata and Naruto turned their heads to the older boy, the latter giving him an annoyed look. Especially when Hinata-sama was present to see that I had won that spar. I was not on the ropes as you said I was. Oh, can it, Tem? Naruto retorted. They rounded a corner. Can't you get that stick shoved up your ass out for 5 seconds and enjoy the mood? Neji's cold exterior slipped as he glared at the blonde's insults. I still cannot see why the elders would continue to allow a foul-mouthed peasant like you to tread these halls. Your so-called Futogen is nothing compared to the might of the Byakugan. The older boy taunted. And I can't see how an asshole like you is even remotely related to Hinata-chan. Yet alone her cousin, Kami must have a twisted sense of humor to let that happen. Naruto shot back. TCH. One day you will pay for your arrogance. You will see that fate dictates all things and that it has decided you and Hinata are failures. He turned around, walked off. Before he turned around the corner, Naruto shouted. Tell that to someone who can't make you sweet in a fight. He resumed his walk with a huff, placing his hands on the back of his head. Hinata close at his side. Seriously, how can some like that be related to you? He asked her. He is Uncle Hazashi's son, Hinata answered quietly. Are you sure that he didn't just find him in some ditch somewhere in the compound and took him in? Naruto said darkly. Naruto. Hinata chided the boy, getting a nervous laugh from him. All right, fine, he said, dropping the matter. Still, I can't get how someone like him can be related to someone as kind and sweet as you are. Hinata blushed at the description Naruto used for her. He used to be a lot kinder. Hinata tried to explain as she pressed her fingers together, an old nervous habit. Before the incident, he was a nice and caring boy. But after what the elders did to Uncle Hazashi, he became like he is now. Please don't blame him. He's had a lot happen to him. She had explained this to him several times before whenever he became irritated with the older Hyuga boy. Still, it doesn't give him the right to be a jerk to you. Naruto huffed. But man, those old farts cause more trouble than they're worth. At least that much she can agree with. Can't your father get rid of them or something? Can't imagine many people would be against it. Hinata shook her head. As unfortunate as it was, the elders held a lot of power in the clan and held onto that power greedily. It's not that easy, Naruto-kun. He can't do whatever he likes just because he is the head of the clan. They came to a door. It should be, he said, opening the door. They stepped outside the main compound. The sky was turning dark with twilight as they walked. The air had begun to cool as well. But the Elder Council does exist for a reason, Hinata said, lowering her head to think. A part of her agreed with Naruto. The clan head should have the power to do what they wished unhindered by the prejudice of the elders. At the same time, though, she understood why the council existed to limit the power of the clan head. The idea was to prevent any future clan head from abusing their power and provide them with counsel on important matters. Hinata knew her father would never abuse his power as the leader of the Hyuga, and he was one of the wisest people she knew. But she knew that in the history of her clan, there had been clan heads that had abused their power and would have to lead the clan to ruin had it not been for the Elder Council. There was no denying that they had done good in the past. But today, though, the elders themselves had become a problem for the clan. Once, they may have been filled with the wisest of the clan who truly held the clan's best interest at heart. Now though, she couldn't help but see that the elders had become too set in their ways and tradition. Tradition that was slowly tearing the Hyuga apart, branding the majority of their family with a seal that many would consider barbaric. Treating those same family members like they were less than nothing simply because they had been born on the wrong side of the family or had been just a few moments later than their siblings. Even going as far as to berate those who did not fully conform to their ideal version of what a Hyuga should be. It saddens her that the Council of Elders had lost their way, and they did not see it or refused to see it. It was a problem that she would have to solve when she became the head of the clan. Assuming if they even let me. She thought darkly as memories of whispering elders surfaced. We will have to see to it that we have a firmer control over Hiyashi's second child's life if we are to mold them into the clan head the Hyuga needs. Indeed, we do not need an heiress as weak she is. Once the second child has proven themselves to be the superior choice, I recommend that we have the girl branded at once. Hiyashi will never allow any of his children to be branded by the caged bird seal. He most certainly will make a move to stop it, and there is no telling what he will do. I agree. Hiyashi is a fool, but he has garnered much support from the Branch family in recent years, not to mention he has the Hokage's personal support. We will have to do something else with her. Something that will not raise a fuss from our wayward clan head. I believe I have an idea for that. It will involve using. The memory ended as the elders suddenly stopped talking, seemingly to realize that there was a presence nearby. Hinata never gave them the chance to find her as she had quickly darted out of the hall and back to her room, shaken by what they were planning. She had never told anyone about what she heard, not even Naruto, too afraid of what the elders would do if they ever found out what she knew. She couldn't allow them to do as they planned to her little sister, brother, she would not let them become a puppet. Naruto seemed to notice that the topic was troubling Hinata, so he changed the subject. So, Hinata, what do you think that the academy will be like? He asked as they rounded a building passing by a Hyuga couple who nodded at them. Hinata looked back to see that they were nearing their destination and back to Naruto smiling at him. While the boy was dense to her feelings towards him, he did have the uncanny ability to read her mood. It was nice to know that someone cared so much about her that they could understand her feelings. I think it will be great. She said. It will be nice to meet other kids our age. I hear our friends will be there as well. An expression of curiosity appeared on Naruto's face. Really? Shikamaru and Choji will be there too. And Kiba as well? Naruto asked. Does that mean I'll get to show Kibble Breath who's boss without getting into trouble with the airbags? Hinata giggled at Naruto's antics. She knew that Naruto had formed something of a heated rivalry with Inuzuka boy. The two would always get into one competition or another whenever they saw each other, sometimes earning the ire of the elders in the process. The two would vehemently deny it, but Hinata knew that the two shared a strong bond of friendship. Yes, they will all be there, including Kiba. So will Ino-chan. She saw Naruto's face light with joy with the news of his friends outside of the compound, then scrunch up in horror at the mention of Ino. Oh man, Miss Bossy Pants will be there too, he said, his face deflating, receiving another giggle from Hinata, this one being louder. Naruto, don't be like that, she said, getting a huff from the boy. She's not that bad. Naruto crossed his arms and pouting. Easy for you to say. She likes you better than me. The two looked at each other for a few seconds, then both began to laugh loudly. After a minute or two, the children caught their breath, and after a few moments, to calm themselves, Naruto spoke. But I guess it's alright. She may be bossy, but she's nice. Naruto said. Hinata nodded her agreement. Ino could be described as a rather hot-tempered girl, but at the end of the day, she stuck close to her friends. She had become a good friend to Hinata and was another source of encouragement. They came to a stop in front of one of the smaller buildings surrounding the main compound. It was the living area that Naruto had been given when he became a ward to the Hyuga clan. While smaller than the others in the district, it was still bigger than most civilians outside the compound. There was light on in one of the windows, meaning that Sarah, Naruto's given caretaker, was home. Instead of entering the house, the two children opted to sit on the porch. Do you think we'll make new friends at the academy? Hinata asked. Even though she knew Naruto would be there at her side and her other friends would be there, she was still nervous. There would be many civilian children attending, and Hinata heard that clan children or even shinobi children usually didn't get along with them because of their different upbringing. Would the other kids make fun of her for her eyes? It was something that Hyuga children sometimes dealt with when they left the compound. How would they treat Naruto, or even what would the teachers do? She'd seen the way the adults would look at him whenever they walked down the streets. Sometimes she'd hear hushed whispers, barely making out the words, fox brat, or demon child. It confused her to no end. Why would they treat Naruto like he was some kind of bad omen? Whenever she asked her father and mother about it, they would say that she should pay no mind to what others thought of Naruto and that she should continue treating him like she always does, like a friend. What she did know was that it had something to do with that strange chakra that enveloped him on that night 2 years ago. It'll be fine, Naruto said to reassure her. I'm sure lots of kids will want to be our friends. Even if they don't, we'll prove how awesome we are and change their minds. He said, standing up striking a pose. Hinata giggled, always happy to see her crush brimming with confidence. Sometimes it made her envious of how bold Naruto could be, wishing she had even half of his energy. I guess you're right, she said. Naruto sat back down next to her. Besides, we'll still have our other friends, and they'll be enough. He said. Hinata smiled, realizing he was right. They didn't have a lot of friends in their lives right now. Hinata leaned back, placing her hands behind her to support her, and gazed up at the darkening sky. You're right, Naruto. We do have good friends, don't we? She may not have the confidence she wanted or the skill she wished she had. But with the help of Naruto and the others, perhaps one day she would be the person she always wanted to be. A woman brimming with confidence and had the power and skill to shape her destiny. When that day finally happened, she would ask Naruto to help her change her clan for the better. To create a clan that was no longer divided in two but would be one that valued family above all else. She looked to Naruto, a small blush forming on her cheeks, and perhaps one day she would be able to ask him for something more. The two sat there chatting until the sun had fully set before they said their goodbyes. Breathe in, breathe out. He was at the center of the storm. Breathe in, breathe out. But even here in the calm, he could feel the intensity of the storm outside. He feels the raging winds lashing out at him. He feels the waters raging uncontrollably, sentencing all who dared to cross them to their end. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. The storm was ancient, older than him. Older than the forest that surrounds his home. Older than anything he could think of. There was another presence within the eye of the storm and at the same time within the storm. It was not as old as the storm but still older than anything the child knew of. Breathe in, breathe out. Here in the calm, the child could exert his will over the endless storm. But the storm rebelled against him and lashed out against him. Even with the other presence holding it back, the child found it difficult not to be swept up into the storm, never to return. He was within the storm, and at the same time, the storm was within him. To control it was to have power unlike any other, to become a part of the unstoppable force of nature. He would become the storm itself. But first, he needed a will unlike any other, or else he would lose himself within the storm and be lost forever. Breathe in, breathe out. The other presence was watching him. This presence was the true master of the storm, and even it found it difficult not to be swept up in the chaos. To master the storm, he needed to work with the presence or overpower it. He chooses to work with it, for the child knew that the presence knew more about the storm than any other and greatly aided him. Its ancient knowledge, too, was a great boon for the child, only needing to ask. The presence spoke. That is enough. The child opened his eyes, and the storm disappeared. Naruto looked at the Kyuubi. The most powerful of the Biju was giving the blonde-haired boy a proud smile. You are improving, Kit. Faster than I had thought. He spoke. Naruto stood up, putting his hand on the grassy ground to the left of himself up. Gazing around the place that was his mindscape, it was fully evident of the changes that had occurred in the last 2 years. Where it once was, a dark, cramped, and confined sewer system was now a vast and open meadow with the sun shining brightly in the blue skies above the two figures. The cage remained, though forever trapping the fox. It was something that Naruto could not change without releasing the Kyuubi. Still, he thought he could at least change the place to something they both could be comfortable in. They were stuck together after all, might as well make the scenery nice. Thanks, Kurama, Naruto said. It was strange to know that he had formed a bond of friendship with the fox in the past 2 years. Something he had never imagined happening before he learned of his status as a Jinchuriki. In those 2 years, he had learned more about the fox than he thought possible or even what most people knew about. Like that he had a name, Kurama. Outside of Naruto, only the Hokage and a select few others knew this fact. Still, I can't help but feel as though I'm not making as much progress as I could. He continued, his mind wandering back to how it felt to be submerged in the power of the Biju. Powerful, wild, and beyond anything he could imagine. The chakra of the Kyuubi was truly like a storm. Always raging, always ready to unleash untold destruction to all in its path. Naruto was expected to control that power one day, something he found to be difficult to comprehend. It was a good thing that Naruto was not the type to give up easily. Do not fret, Kit, Kurama said, placing his hand on his paws. No one expects you to master my power in a day. Even with Shukaku, the weakest of the 9, it takes years for a Jinchuriki to master his power. With me, any normal person, it would likely take decades. The fox's smile widens into a mischievous one. Lucky for you, you are both one stubborn Gaki and an Uzumaki. Though one could fail to see the difference. I understand, Naruto said soberly. He knew where the man was coming from. Even he found it difficult to forgive Kurama for all the lives lost during the attack. He knew that the fox wasn't in control of himself during that night, and it was another who had used him to attack his home. But it was hard to separate him from the fact that he had been the one to kill all those people. It was the swipe from one of his 9 tails that reduced so much of Konoha to rubble. But he was trying. But still, at least try to. He said, hoping to drop the subject quickly. That is all we can sometimes, Hazashi said. Now then, he said that you were making good progress. Did he make any indication on how far along you are? I'm not sure. Let me ask him. Naruto replied. Hey, Kurama. I heard what the Hyuga said. The voice of the fox rang in Naruto's head. If I had to guess, you might be able to control 1 tail's worth of power but wouldn't hold my breath. I'm not even at 1 tail yet. Naruto exclaimed. Aw man, I've been at this for 2 years now. Shouldn't I at least be doing 1 tail? He mentally pouted. In the back of his mind, he heard the fox chuckle. Remember, Kit, I am the strongest of the 9 Biju. It should be no surprise that it would take the longest to master my power, which we are aiming for mastery. Sure, you may be able to control 1, maybe 2 tails, but you would not have mastery over it. And if I don't have total control over it, I risk losing myself, Naruto said, mentally gritted teeth. That's right, Kit, and I won't let you use any of my power until I say you're ready, Kurama said, emphasizing his point. So how long until I can defiantly do 1 tail? Naruto asked. If you keep this progress up, then very likely by the time you graduate from the academy, you may even be on your way to doing 2 tails. The good news is once you're past the first tail or 2, progress will be comparatively faster with the other tails. By my estimation, and don't quote me on this, by the time your body has reached full maturity, you may be close to fully mastering my power. Naruto perked up at Kurama's assessment. Not even his mother had managed to fully master Kurama's power before she died. She was close. That's great to hear, Kurama. I'm going to be awesome when I grow. Gigi, you best give me that hat. He mentally cheered and was almost jumping with excitement. He heard a quiet cough that stopped him. He looked to Hazashi, who was giving him an odd look. I take it that the fox said something good judging your rather celebratory mood. He said. Naruto had the right mind to act a bit sheepish. Sorry about that, he said. But yes, he said that by the time I graduate from the academy, I'll have control over 1 tail's worth of power. He even thinks I'll be close to having full control over his power by the time I grow up. Isn't great, awesome even. I'm going to be a kick-ass ninja in the future. He declared, raising his fist into the air. Now then Kit. Kurama chided. Don't go and get ahead of yourself. You still have a long way to go, and even if you do gain full control, you won't be invincible. A more experienced and skilled opponent will find a way to beat you. Power alone will not win a battle. You need the knowledge, experience, and creativity to fully use your powers to their fullest potential. And right now, you only one of those three. Naruto visibly deflated at Kurama's explanation. Spoilsport, why can't you let me have some fun? He pouted, not arguing the point. He heard Kurama laugh lightly. Because you make it easy. Naruto rolled his eyes and turned his attention back to the Hyuga man. So, yay, that's about what he said. I see, Hazashi said, ignoring the exchange Naruto had with the fox. It seems you are making remarkable progress. I do not doubt that you will become one of Konoha's greatest shinobi. Naruto smiled and was about to reply when he suddenly frowned, causing a worried expression to form on Hazashi's lips. Over the 2 years since he gained the Fudogen, Naruto had collected several more pairs of eyes, mostly from condemned criminals and enemy shinobi, a few times from Konoha shinobi who had volunteered their bodies after they passed away. He kept several of them with his person and others he had throughout the compound. He even had a pair follow Gigi around on occasion. One pair of eyes had caught something that made his heart race with panic. Naruto, is something the matter? Hazashi said, an edge of concern in his voice. Naruto looked up at the twin of the Hyuga clan head, an all too serious expression on his face. It's Hinata's mom, he said. If Hazashi's worry wasn't visible, then it was now. She's collapsed in the garden and... Naruto stopped as something else caught his eye. He felt the muscles around his eyes used to be widened. And there's water all over her. Several hours later, outside of Konoha. For the 7th time, that day and probably the 100th time in the past 2 weeks, Tsunade wondered what the hell she was doing. The source of her trepidation. Konoha. There it is, came the excited voice of her apprentice Shizune. In her arms, her pet pig Tonton oinked in equal excitement. Tsunade looked to her apprentice, seeing the excitement rolling off her. A bit of her nervous energy ebbing away at seeing how happy the girl she thought of as her daughter. Remember, Shizune, we're only here for a short while. We are not staying here. No, there were too many demons waiting for her there. Too much bad blood between her and her former home. She looked down the path they were walking. At the end were the gates that led into the hidden village. They were wide open for all to enter and likely guarded by a dozen shinobi. Why was she returning to the place that more than a decade ago she swore never to return to? Coming back to the place that caused her so much heart-arch. The place that took her brother and lover away from her. The answer was simple and complicated. 2 years ago, Hokage Tower. Tsunade closed the door behind her as she entered the last place she thought she would go to, the Hokage's office. Your verdict, her former mentor said, cutting to the chase. She looked to the man that at one time she had considered as her adoptive grandfather, still does. She shook her head, genuine pain stabbing at her as she saw the grief that flushed his face. I'm afraid there's nothing I can about it. The nerves around his eyes suffered too much damage. Not even I would be able to fix them. I see, was all the old man said. Sensei, you're getting too old for this. Just retire before this job kills you. Truthfully, she didn't know what she would do if something ever were to happen to her former mentor. She had already almost lost all the people she held dear to her. Only 4 such people remained alive today, and one of them had become a twisted perversion of his former self. I tried my best even though of several new techniques that could work. But they were beyond my skill to work, beyond current medical technology or both. I'm sorry. At this, she wanted to turn and leave out the door and get of this village. Leave before the memories got to her. Her feet refused to move. She saw the man give her a critical eye as though he had expected her to leave and was now trying to determine as to why she hadn't walked out. I understand, Tsunade, he said after a moment. How long will you be staying here? He asked. Not a moment longer than I need to be. She thought. I don't know, she said uncertainly. She saw the barest hint of a smile on the old man's face. So, he's already had an effect on you. He said as a statement more than as a question. Tsunade brushed a stray strand of hair back into place. I don't know what you're talking about. A lie. Flashes of her examination of the blonde-haired boy surfacing. His bright and yet weary smile when her former and still sane, debatable teammate introduced them. His excited bubble as she looked over his empty eye sockets, an image that disturbed her and made her wish the worst pain upon the perpetrator, talking about how he heroically faced down an S-rank Kumo nin to save a beautiful princess. Ah, kids and their exaggerations. Except she knew it wasn't a complete exaggeration. He had faced down a Kumo shinobi to protect the heiress of the Hyuga clan. She wanted to strangle the Jinchuriki for his foolishness. Didn't the brat know that he could have been killed? Dear Kami above, this tiny clone of Minato had inherited both of his parents' recklessness. She kept these thoughts buried in the back of her mind as she finished her examination. What she didn't know was that the smile she kept on her face had been a real one. Only truly faltering when he mentioned his dream of being Hokage. Foolish, she wanted to say to the son of the girl that was the closest thing she had to a daughter. She wanted to tell him that only idiots strived for such a goal and that the job would only make him suffer. She didn't say a word of it and replaced her smile. She told herself that she would not get attached to this ball of sunshine. She would be here for a few nights at best, long enough to rest up and stock up on supplies. They would never see each other again. She told herself that this boy would never achieve his dream, that it would be best to forget about him. At the same time, a small treacherous voice spoke in the back of her mind. You will get attached. You already are. You know he will become Hokage because you want to believe he will. Why would I believe that? She asked that voice. What's the alternative? The voice shot back. Tsunade didn't answer. Her silence was enough. Very well, Tsunade, her former mentor said, dropping the subject. Regardless, I'm glad that you're here. It's good to see you after so long. He said with a tired smile. Same to you, she said, surprised at how honest she was. She hadn't realized how much she had missed her former sensei. Hell, she had been surprised at how refreshing it had been when her pervert ex-teammate had suddenly shown up. She was about to turn around and open the door when she saw the old man reach into his desk. A moment later, he flops a small stack of papers on his desk. While you're here, there's another favor I would like to ask of you. Present time, Gates if Konoha. Since then, she had made infrequent visits to her old home. Usually, to check up on her aging ex-mentor, old man, you need to retire and stock up on new supplies on her journeys. She would also check up at the hospital and help with implementing the new improvements as per her agreement with the Hokage. In return for paying off her debts, she would get to enact the plans she proposed several years ago to improve Konoha's medical care. Both in the shinobi and civilian fields. Progress was slowing going with her infrequent visits, but already the village was benefiting from the changes. Much to her chagrin, Naruto would find her and irritated her to no end. Because of the blonde-haired brat, she would frequently visit the Hyuga compound. She had to admit it was good to see Hitomi again, and her daughter was too cute for words. No wonder that Kushina's spawn had fallen for her even if he didn't know it yet. The last time she had been here was about 4 months ago. They stopped at the gates and were greeted by the two Chunin manning customs. Tsunade-sama. One of them greeted the pair, triad if you counted the pig. It's good to see you. He continued pulling out a sheet of paper and began to write on it. I assume you're here to visit Hokage-sama and check the progress at the hospital. Tsunade simply nodded, not bothered with having small talk. She signed the paper for her and her apprentice, plus Taunton, allowing them entry into the village. Once done, they entered the village. Finally, a place where we can sleep in real beds, and not dirt. Her apprentice said with a serene smile. Tsunade rolled her eyes at the young woman's antics. Honestly, Shizune-yo, her comment was cut off when an Anbu with spiky gray hair and a dog mask appeared right in front of them. The man kneeled in front of them. Tsunade-sama, I apologize for this intrusion. I know you only just got here. He said. There was an urgency in his voice that caught the full attention of the two women. What is it? Tsunade asked, already getting a bad feeling in the pit of her stomach. Taking a quick side glance at her apprentice, she saw that the young woman had a similarly worried expression. Tsunade-sama, I ask that you come to the Hyuga compound right away. It's an emergency. The statement confused the Sannin. What could be happening at the Hyuga? Tsunade's eyes widened as everything clicked in her mind. This should be about the time that, oh, Kami, please tell me she's okay. Her mind raced. 4 months ago, when she had been in Konoha, she had checked on Hitomi and knew about her condition. At the time, she couldn't identify the cause. Her condition couldn't have deteriorated that much, could it? It is the Hyuga matriarch Hitomi-sama. She's in labor, and I'm afraid that there has been complete. Tsunade didn't give the man the chance to finish. Faster than even she thought possible, she was racing towards the Hyuga compound, her apprentice close behind. Can't let another person die on my hands. Not again, her subconscious thought. A minute later, at the Hyuga compound, outside the medical ward. What do you mean you don't know what's wrong? Hiyashi all but shouted at the Hyuga doctor. The man squirmed under the clan head's intense glare. It is precisely as I said, Hiyashi-sama. The doctor replied, doing his best to keep calm. I cannot identify the cause of your wife's current condition. Whatever it is, it appears to be killing her. Hiyashi took a step back like he had been slapped. This can't be happening. His beloved Hitomi was dying, and there was nothing he or anyone else could do about it. He had been in a clan meeting when he heard about his wife going into sudden labor and almost immediately encountering complications. He had been well out of the chamber before the elders had a chance to respond. Close to the pair sitting on a bench were Naruto and Hinata. Both children were looking every bit as distressed as he was. Naruto was softly saying comforting words to Hinata, trying without success to calm the girl down. Next to them stood his twin Hazashi, a grim expression on his face. Next to him was Neji, a cold expression, but Hiyashi could see the small cracks in his mask. He too was concerned about his aunt by marriage. He just didn't want to show it. Killing her, he repeated after a short silence. I'm afraid so, the doctor said, nodding his head. Hiyashi-sama, if we don't do something soon, I fear we may lose both the mother and child. Again, Hiyashi was stunned to silence. Not only could he lose his wife, but there was a chance that he could lose his second child. That was a loss he didn't know if he could bear and didn't even want to think about how it would affect Hinata. Is there anything you can do to save her? He asked, clinging to any hope he could. The doctor gave an expression that told him everything he needed to know. I'm afraid not, Hiyashi-sama. At this point, Lady, Hitomi is a lost cause. Hiyashi almost choked. Our only recourse at this point is to do what we can to save the baby. Never in his life did Hiyashi thought he would be faced with such a difficult decision. Save his second child and lose his wife, or try to save them both and lose them both. His eyes turned to the children, seeing that Hinata had buried her face in Naruto's shoulder, who had a blank expression on his face. Even the eyes that floated around him seemed to show no emotion. The grim expression of Hazashi's face had grown deeper. Finally, his eyes settled back on the doctor. Are you certain that there's nothing you can do? He asked for clarification. The Hyuga doctor shook his head. Without a doubt, we either save the baby or lose them both. I beseech you, Hiyashi-sama, make your decision now. The more time we waste, the harder it will be to save the child. Hiyashi remained silent for what seemed like hours, even days. In reality, it had been less than 3 seconds. In that brief window that had stretched out into eternity, he thought of all the consequences that come from his decision at this moment. His wife, his daughter's mother, would die no matter what choice he made. Would Hinata be able to handle the loss of her mother? Would she become like Neji, cold, resentful, and a deep hatred buried deep in her? Would she regress into her shell? How would it affect Naruto? Hitomi had become a mother figure to the orphan boy, something he dearly needed and craved. Finally, how would it affect him? Aside from Hinata and his brother, he loved Hitomi more than anything in the world. Then there was the possibility that he could lose his second child alongside his wife. That was a far more deadly blow. He opened his mouth. Save. Then fate took pity on him at this moment. Hold on, came a frantic and familiar voice. But to him, it might as well as be the voice of Kami. Tsunade, the so-called slug Sannin and world-renowned medic, stopped in front of him. Her apprentice close behind. I'm not too late, am I? An irritated expression appeared on the Hyuga doctor's face. Now, hold on, he said, turning to face the Sannin. You can't just barge in here and, then promptly shut his mouth and paled once he recognized the former student of the Sandame. Tsunade-sama, please forgive me, I meant no disrespect. The doctor began to apologize. The Sannin held her hand up to stop the man. Can it? She said sharply, silencing the man. How is the patient? The man hesitated and looked to Hiyashi, sending a silent question to the clan head. Hiyashi nodded his approval, and the doctor returned his attention to Tsunade. The patient, Lady Hitomi, is not faring well, he said reluctantly. The Sannin glared at the doctor. That much I can gather, she said harshly. What I want are details. The Hyuga doctor flinched at the woman's tone of voice. Of course, Tsunade-sama, I was getting to that, he replied. About an hour ago, Hitomi-sama, while tending to the gardens, went into labor suddenly. The complications showed almost immediately after as she collapsed. If it had not been for our ward Uzumaki Naruto, then we may have never found out until it was too late. He gestured to the boy in question. So that's how we found out. Hiyashi thought to himself. It seemed now he owed the boy another debt. The adults looked to the blonde-haired child, who perks up at the mention of his name. I had a pair of my eyes watching her, Naruto explained nervously, his cheeks getting a slight tint of red. I noticed that she wasn't feeling well for a while. I was worried. So, I decided to keep an eye on her, no pun intended. I'm sorry if I crossed a line, he raised his hands defensively. I always tried to respect her privacy. I never watched her use the bathroom or bath or anything like if that's what you're worried about. Then he began to scratch his cheek a nervous tick. I was just worried about her, ya know. She's almost like a mother to me. Hiyashi and Hitomi both had been aware of Naruto's spying. Both Hyuga had figured that the boy had been concerned for her and only wanted to make sure she was okay. Though Hiyashi did intend on talking to the boy about the matter after the baby had come. Spying on others was unbecoming of a young man, at least when inside the walls of Konoha or when not actively carrying out his duties as a shinobi of the village. In those cases, it was all fair game. We'll discuss this later, Naruto-san. But thank you, Hitomi may owe you her life. Hiyashi said. Don't worry about what we think of it. In this case, you did the right thing. He tried to assure the boy that he did nothing inherently wrong. Naruto brightens up. Thanks, he said. And you're welcome. Seeing this as a good time to cut in, Tsunade took a step towards the boy. Tell me, Naruto, what you saw when she collapsed, Tsunade asked. They saw the boy think over the question before he responded. When she collapsed, I got concerned, so my full attention went to where she was. I noticed that her dress was soaked, and there was water all around her. He explained. I think that might have been some blood mixed in. It was a very subtle gesture, almost unnoticeable even for the eyes of a shinobi, but Hiyashi caught it. Tsunade flinched. You're still afraid, aren't you, Tsunade-sama? Hiyashi thought, remembering the Sannin's fear of the red substance. The moment hardly lasted a moment before Tsunade got a hold of herself. Was there anything else? Signs of fatigue, shaking, any kind of change in behavior? She pressed the boy. Fatigued. Did she seem tired? Tsunade explained. Naruto nodded. Yeah, she did. She was kind of moving slowly, and right before she collapsed, it looked like she got really dizzy, Naruto said. It's what got my attention in the first place. The Sannin placed her hand on her chin. I see, she said in a tone that indicated she was thinking. That was very helpful, Naruto, thank you. She turned back to the doctor. Hiyashi gave the blonde a thankful inclination of his head. Thank you, Naruto. You have been more than a help in this situation. He said. Please continue to look after Hinata while I discuss things with Tsunade-sama. Naruto nodded at him. Next to him, Hinata held onto his arm, a worried expression still on her face, but now her eyes had a glint of hope in them. Turning back to face the doctor and Tsunade, Hiyashi listened to their conversation. If you can't give me a cause, then at least give me the symptoms, Tsunade growled at the Hyuga man. Oh, of course, Lady Tsunade. The man quivered. As young Naruto stated, Lady Hitomi is experiencing extreme fatigue. She's barely managed to hold on to consciousness throughout her labor. Furthermore, she's been showing signs of disorientation and possible hallucination. She might not be fully aware of what's happening to her right now. He explains Hitomi's condition as he did with Hiyashi. Hearing it a second time felt no better than the first. Please, Tsunade, if there's anything you can do about this, then do it. The Hyuga clan head wished to himself. What about her physical condition? Tsunade prompted the man. Also, is it okay if my apprentice checks up on her? If you think she can help, then please be my guest. The doctor indicated. Tsunade motioned to her apprentice, a young lady with black straight hair and eyes holding a pig. Of course, Tsunade-sama. She walked to the bench and placed the pig next to Naruto. Could you please look after Taunton for me, Naruto-san? She asked. Sure. Why not? Naruto asked, giving the pig an awkward stare as it trotted up to him and sat in his lap. Thank you, she said and turned around to walk up to the sliding door. She opened it and walked in. Excuse me, I'm here too. Her voice was cut off as she slid the door shut behind her. Now, as for her physical condition, the Hyuga doctor began. Simply put, she's getting weaker. Getting weaker. Tsunade pressed a slight edge of annoyance. Yes, there's no other way to describe it. I haven't found what's causing it, no signs of internal bleeding, trauma, poison, or anything else that could be a cause. I even checked to see if her pregnancy had any link, nothing. She is simply getting weaker, dangerously so. As I was saying to Hiyashi-sama, I fear our only option is to do what we can to save the child. Tsunade listened intently to the doctor's assessment. A deep frown appeared on her face. What made you think it was poison? She asked. He didn't mention anything about poison. Hiyashi thought, horrified at the possibility that someone would do that to Hitomi. It was a remote possibility that I decided to test. Since the other causes didn't seem to work out, I thought it a good idea to test and see if poison or venom was involved. The doctor explained. No luck. Tsunade-sama, I found no traces of any kind of poison in her body. Hiyashi relaxed at hearing that. Not surprising, as if it were poison, it would be affecting the baby as well. The baby has been unaffected. I find that difficult to believe. Tsunade said, sounding a bit suspicious. As remarkable as it sounds, the baby, for the most part, appears to be unaffected by the mother's condition. Granted, there are signs of stress on the baby but nothing dangerous. The Hyuga man clarified. It is why I believe the child can be saved while the mother cannot. Tsunade-sama, Hiyashi said, getting the Sanin's attention. Is there anything you can do about Hitomi? Please, I don't want to lose her. Hiyashi said desperately. A sympathetic flashed across the woman's face. I'm not sure, Hiyashi. From the sounds of it, her condition sounds bad. Tsunade tried to explain. I'll have to take a look for myself. But if there is a chance, I will try to save her. That is if you don't mind if I take over from here, doctor. She said to the Hyuga doctor. The man gave a respectful bow to the Sanin. Of course, Tsunade-sama, it would be an honor to see the greatest medic nin in the elemental nations in action. If you do not mind that I aid and observe you. Tsunade rolled her eyes at the man's flattery. Then let's get to work. She said, gesturing for the man to move. He nodded and stepped towards the door, opening and closing it behind him. Thank you, Tsunade. Hiyashi said with a bow. Regardless of what happens here, the Hyuga clan will be in your debt today. Just please save my wife and child. His voice was uneven as he tried to keep his emotions from overwhelming him. Tsunade turned her head to face the man, seeing that he was open and genuine with his feelings, a rare sight with a Hyuga, not to mention the clan head. Don't thank me just yet, she said just above a whisper oud enough for him to hear. I still haven't seen Hitomi for myself yet, she said, turning to the door. She stepped right in front of it and froze. No, not now, Tsunade thought herself. She had been about to step through the door when the reality of the situation had fully hit her. She was about to go in and take care of a patient in need. A patient who was giving birth and was in a critical state. A patient who could die if she failed. A patient who was bleeding. There would be blood. There would be blood. There would be blood. Tsunade started to take a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She had to keep her hemophobia from overwhelming her. She had to keep those memories of a dying boy and a dying lover both covered in their own blood from stopping her from doing her job. She had to. In the back of her head, a small voice was mocking her. Ladies and gentlemen, gaze upon the most pathetic thing you'll ever see. Tsunade Senju, the world's greatest medic, is afraid of a little blood. How can she expect herself to operate in a profession where it's guaranteed she'll encounter the stuff? Tsunade wanted to rebut the voice but couldn't come up with an adequate answer. Oh, that's right, she didn't. The voice almost laughed. She all but abandoned her profession and ran like a coward. The voice was right. She had, for the longest time, turned her back on being a medic. Her training of Shizune notwithstanding, she had not done much as a healer in the past decade. When she did, it was comparatively minor stuff, something any hometown doctor could do. Even when she was roped into doing something bigger, she usually trusted her apprentice to do the bulk of the work. Only in the last 2 years did she start to do anything resembling the work she used to do. When she and her former sensei made their deal about improving the medic practices of Konoha, again, nothing major. Like surgery or anything else that would involve her seeing and coming into contact with blood. If she got squeamish around something as simple as a paper cut, then how was she expected to help a patient through childbirth? No, I can't do this, she thought, taking a step back. It's too much. Let Shizune handle it. She can do it. She tried to justify the mocking voice continuing its taunts. Then a new voice sounded in the back of her mind. Yes, you can, it said. It had been barely above a whisper, but it had been enough to break her out of her panic-induced state. She didn't recognize the voice, but it had a strange familiarity to it that she couldn't place. Whatever it was, it had been enough to kick her mind into gear. She looks to Hiyashi, seeing a very concerned expression on his face. Tsunade, are you alright? He asked. She wants to say that she wasn't, that she was not ready for something like this. But she shoved that thought to the deepest recesses of her mind. I'm fine, she said. Just lost focus for a second. She admitted the partial truth. Hiyashi, I will save Hitomi and your child. You have my word on that. For the first, since she got here, she saw a smile form on the man's lips. It wasn't forced one either, showing signs of hope in it. Thank you, Tsunade, he said. For the first time in a long time, Tsunade found herself believing her own words. She turned her gaze back to the door and steeled her nerves for what was to come next. She opened the door, knowing that if she stepped through, there would be no turning back. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Several hours later, Hinata didn't know how long she had passed when Naruto nudged her awake. Groggily she opened her eyes and gazed at the blonde-haired boy. She lifted her head, too tired to have noticed that her head had been resting on his shoulder. Naruto? She asked, almost yawning. She saw the boy motion towards something. She turned her head to face whatever he wanted her to see. It was her father waving for them to come in. It took a few seconds for her tired mind to wake up and process the picture before her. When it did, a wave of apprehension came over her. Her mother had gone into labor, and as Hinata understood it, something had gone wrong. Something that could cause her mother to die. When she had realized that the girl couldn't control herself, and had ended up crying into Naruto's shoulder. She didn't care if what she was doing would be considered unhuga-like. She didn't care if Neji would mock her for her open display of weakness. Nor did she care that she had gotten into her crush's personal space. Something that causes her face to turn beet red. All that she knew was that she was going to lose her mother and possibly her little brother, sister. What could she do without her mother? Her ever-loving mother who would gently stroke away her tears whenever she had a nightmare. Her mother, who cared for the central gardens, and passed on her love of nature to Hinata. Her mother who would encourage her to do her best in everything she did. How could she bear to lose her mother? When the doctor had made his report to her father, she had lost all hope. Then that other lady showed up, Tsunade, she believed her name was. The name did trigger a strange sense of familiarity in the back of her mind. She felt as though she should know who the lady was but couldn't place her. But she did recognize the woman. She had shown up 2 years ago to examine Naruto, something about seeing if she could restore his eyes, and would every few months make an appearance in the village. Naruto seemed to take a shine to her, even calling her Ba-chan, a nickname that seemed to irk the woman to no end. With her sudden appearance, hope had begun to well up in her again as the woman proclaimed that she would save her mother and soon to be a newborn sibling. For the next several hours, before Hinata had dozed off, Hinata waited with a mix of hope and despair, wishing that her mother would survive. She would often see the younger lady, Shizune, if she heard correctly, dashing out of the room along with the doctor and nurse. Sometimes disappearing down the hall and to later return with an assortment of items. Sometimes they would stop by to talk to her father and uncle, speaking in hushed tones. Always they would look exhausted. Now the moment of truth had come. "To-san?" she asked, hope and fear resonating in her voice. Her father gave her a weary smile, an action that both made her hopeful and fearful. "Come," he said quietly. Wordlessly Hinata nodded her head. She felt Naruto standing up. She looked up at him, seeing that he was now offering his hand to her. She took his hand, a small blush heating her cheeks as she realized that she would be holding her crush's hand. With his help, Hinata stood up, and still holding hands, the young pair followed her father past the door into a small hallway. They walked down the small hall. As they came to the door, Hinata felt her heart beat faster. She felt Naruto squeeze her hand. She looked at him, seeing a reassuring smile on his face. Hinata nodded at him, thankful he was here to support her no matter what happened. The two went through the second set of doors. Hinata prepared herself for the worst. What she saw stopped her heart for a moment. For her, that had been an eternity. Sitting up in her bed, alive and well, was her mother. Her eyes were tired, but she had a content smile on her face as she gazed down at a precious bundle. That bundle Hinata quickly realized was her newborn sibling. The mother noticed the newcomers, and her smile widened as she motioned them over. When they got to her bed, Hinata could make out some of the details of the baby. She noticed how small it was, how vulnerable it was. The child had its eyes closed. She couldn't see the eyes, but she knew that underneath they were the same eyes as hers. Small bits of black hair could be seen poking out from the cover. The baby was beautiful, and Hinata felt a happiness she never thought possible well up inside of her. Her mother smiled at her, her eyes looking tired, almost dead. Carefully she held the child to Hinata. "Say hello to Hanabi, your little sister," she said, voice calm and tired. Hinata let go of Naruto's hand and gently took the baby Hanabi into her arms and held her close to her chest. The small caused the newborn to stir. Her eyelids opened, revealing the same set of pale eyes that all Hyuga had. She gazed up curiously at Hinata. Hinata's smile brightened, and she knew that she loved her little sister. "Hello, Hanabi. Welcome to the family." Hiruzen looked out the window of his office. It was early in the day, but he could feel the weight on his eyelids. Outside he could see the citizens of the village going about their day. Sometimes he saw the distinctive shape of a shinobi or two jumping from rooftop to rooftop. It lifted his spirits to see such a peaceful day in his village. It almost made him forget all his regrets, all his mistakes. Almost. I'm getting too old for this job. He had been too old when he had named his successor and had been when he was forced to take the hat again. That night had been hard on him for more reasons than one: the loss of his successor Minato and his wife Kushina, leaving their newborn child Naruto alone in a cruel world. The death of his beloved Bawako and the deaths of so many others all weighed down on him. Perhaps what was the worst part of it all was the cause of it. To be more accurate, a former member of Konoha's shinobi forces long thought to be dead. In the aftermath of the Kyuubi attack, the body of the true culprit had been found where Minato had said he killed him. It had been difficult to identify who it had been at first due to his head having been obliterated by a Rasengan. DNA testing had confirmed his identity, and the results had almost broken him. That night he had ordered the identity of the man and the DNA tests to be sealed. The only thing that would be known was that the attacker had been a rogue Uchiha. No one, least of all Kakashi, would ever know that it had been Obito that was behind the Kyuubi attack 7 years ago. He would see to it that the boy would always be remembered as a hero. It was better that way. What happened, Obito? What caused you to turn on us in such a way? It was the first of many questions he asked himself about that night. He may never know the answers, and to be honest with himself, he hoped he never would. He had more than just the regrets of the past weighing down on him. New problems were rearing their ugly heads in the present, two to be exact. Both had one thing in common at their root: Hyuga. The incident 2 years ago was most certainly causing him headaches. He was making plans in the event the worst happened, a reality that seemed more likely with each passing day, and thus was a lesser issue at the moment. It was the second and most recent problem that occupied his thoughts and brought about his melancholy. A few days ago, Hitomi had given birth to her and Hiyashi's second daughter Hyuga Hanabi. Normally this would be a joyous occasion, something that would warm his old heart to know that new life had been brought into the world, into his village. A welcome change considering his profession. The girl's birth had been anything but normal. Very few outside the Hyuga clan knew of Hitomi's troubled pregnancy, and he had been one of them. No one could quite figure out the cause behind the woman's illness. Even Tsunade couldn't figure it out when she examined her several months ago. Now they had an answer, and Hiruzen had been left disturbed by the implications. Hitomi had been poisoned. If it had not been for Tsunade's timely arrival into the village, then the Hyuga would likely be making burial arrangements right now. The poison had been a very subtle one, enough to avoid Tsunade's attention when she first examined Hitomi. Otherwise, they would have found it a long time ago. He didn't know the exact details, but he gathered that Hitomi going into labor had made the poison more noticeable to Tsunade's sharp eyes. Once she knew that poison had been involved, she had set about treating Hitomi while helping her through the birthing process. Hitomi wasn't in the clear yet, she was still weak from the poison and childbirth, but Tsunade said she was optimistic. The worrisome part was if his former student was correct, then Hitomi had been poisoned over the course of months. Which meant the culprit was someone in Konoha and likely a Hyuga. Doubly so since the poison was one that had been used by Suna on Konoha shinobi when the relations between the two had been less than amicable. A poison that Tsunade had treated and was stored in a secured site to be studied. Only high-ranking officials in the Shinobi Corp and authorized medical personnel were allowed in there. The implication of that worried the old Hokage to no end. He looked up to the sky hanging overhead, gazing at the 4 faces carved into the mountainside. His eyes settled on the second of the 4. Sensei, the village you and your brother helped to create it is in dark times now. If you were to see it now, how would you react? Would you be as worried about its future now as I am? It was a thought that haunted him at night more times than he cared to count. He looked to the 4th and newest of the faces. Minato, if only you had survived that night, then perhaps we would not be facing the problems we are now. Perhaps we would not be readying ourselves for another war, nor would we have traitors amidst our ranks. He let out another long sigh, feeling every year his age. Tsunade was right. He needed to retire before this job killed him. The trouble was he had no successor to hand the hat to. He had some ideas for candidates, but each had their problems. Kakashi, too mentally unstable for the position and did not want the job. Jiraiya, he would have an uprising from the kunoichi. Danzo, the less said about that, the better. His former student Tsunade was probably his best choice as a successor. She had in recent years shown signs of improvement in her mental health, and despite what she claimed, Hiruzen knew she still cared for the village that her grandfather created. But she still had a way to go before he was ready to hand the hat to her, and at the moment, she would flat out deny his offer. No, he was afraid that he would have to hold on to the hat for a few more years. By then, he would have a few more options to choose from. He turned away from the window and back to his desk, which had a mountain of paperwork on it. He swore that the thing grew 5 inches while his back was turned. He picked up a sheet, eager to get his mind focused on something else. The intercom on his desk buzzed, grabbing his attention. Yes, Aiko. What is it? He said with a press of a button. Hokage-sama. The voice of his secretary responded. A guest is waiting for you. It's Tsunade-sama, sir. She appears to be eager to meet with you. If the woman had been in the same room, she would saw Hiruzen's eyes widen. Is that so? He said. Please send her in. What could his former student want? Usually, she would be on her way out of the village by now. She already is. Almost on cue, the door to his office opened, and in walked Tsunade. There was an expression on her face that he couldn't place. Tsunade, it's good to see you. Hiruzen greeted his student while trying to gauge her. To what pleasure do I owe this unexpected visit? He pulled out his pipe and lit it. Old man, there's something I want to talk to you about. Hyuga compound. Naruto, quit squirming and hold still. She'll be out in a moment. Sarah said, chastising her ward. Naruto glanced up at her, giving her an exasperated look. Impressive considering, he had no eyes, at least not where they should be. But Sarah-chan, we've been waiting for like 100 hours. The Hyuga woman had to stop herself from rolling her eyes at the boy's exaggeration. Honestly, the boy was more trouble than he was worth sometimes. She supposes that was a part of his charm. The boy did have a strange talent for worming his way into people's hearts if they gave him a chance. She had been no exception 2 years ago. It has not been that long. She said sternly with a bit of amusement slipping in. She had to admit that she had been less than enthusiastic when she learned that she would be the Jinchuriki's caretaker when he had been taken in as a ward of the clan. At the time, she had been Chunin that was starting to make a name for herself and had been well on her way to being a Jonin in a few years. Taking care of the child, any child really would slow her progress, maybe even stump her completely. And yes, there was the stigma of having to care for the village's resident Jinchuriki. Looking back now, she realized she had acted in a manner unbefitting of a Hyuga and as a shinobi of Konoha. When she met the boy, she had to expect to meet many things. A wild animal-like child, a bloodthirsty demon in human flesh, a soulless being. She did not expect to meet a small lonely, shy, and, looking back at it now, afraid boy. Who at the time would flinch whenever she raised her voice even above a whisper or would pull away from her even at the slightest touch. If she ever met the former matron of the orphanage, unpleasant things would happen. She had not expected that boy to become the ball of sunshine he was now, nor did she expect him to become an important part of her life. She was proud to say that in the past 2 years, she had done a fine job caring for the boy. Her skills as a kunoichi had not degraded as she first feared they would. She had kept them sharp through training, and occasionally she was sent on missions that required her skill set. She was still a shinobi of Konoha, after all. If anything, they had improved. Naruto being a training nut did not hurt. But how much longer is she going to be? I'll die of old age at this rate. Naruto whined. How long can it take a girl to get ready? Get used to it, young one. You'll be waiting a lot on her in the future. She thought to herself. Naruto, she'll be out when she's done and not a moment before. She said before a smile crept onto her face. Besides this, ladies need to look our best on special days like this. She said, striking a small pose. Naruto gave her a blank expression. So that's never for you. Sarah felt a vein bulge in her head as she resisted the urge to thump the impudent child on the head. So, this is what it was like to have a younger brother. Thank Cammy, she had been an only child. Watch it, boy, you're one remark away from a visit to the hospital. She saw a fox-like grin spread across his face. The boy opened his mouth, and Sarah was in the process of making an explanation to Hiyashi-sama about the blonde's demise. Fortunately, Cammy decided that today was not Naruto's day to enter the pure world as a set of doors slide open to reveal three familiar figures. Flanked by both of her parents, Hinata looked stunning in her dress. Evident by how Naruto was doing his best impression of a fish. Oh, this is going to make great blackmail material in the future. Sarah thought to herself as she bowed to the clan head and his family. If only I had a camera right now. Click. The sound of a camera got the Hyuga woman's attention. She raised from her bow to see Hitomi-sama holding a camera, a fresh picture rolling of it. Taking the photo out and examining it, the Hyuga matriarch gave Sarah a knowing wink. The sound of the camera had also snapped Naruto out of his daze, and just as quickly, the device was gone. Wow, Hinata-chan, you look great. The boy said with a smile. Sarah was treated with the sight of a scarlet-faced Hinata. Thank you Naruto-kun. She said. You look good too. Told you that getting dressed into something nice would pay off. Sarah thought as she remembered Naruto kicking up a fuss about wearing something nicer than what he normally wore. The blonde scratched the back of his head. Thanks, Hinata-chan, he said, his smile brightening. Sarah smiled to herself at seeing the interaction between the two children. Even if they didn't realize it, it was evident to everyone around that the two cared for each other deeply. I may be a bit biased, but Naruto-kun, you have picked a fine young lady to fall for. The same goes for you, Hinata-sama. She noticed that the group had started to move, and she walked close behind her eyes, remaining on the children. It came as a surprise to her that Hiyashi had fallen back to walk beside her. You did a good job caring for the boy. He said. We couldn't have picked a better person for the job. She felt elated at her clan's head's praise. I was merely doing my job. She humbly admitted. Anyone else would have done the same. Hiyashi shook his head. Perhaps for the first month or two, you were. But after that, you did more than just doing your job. He said, looking at her. I remember what happened with that storekeeper in the third month. A dark shadow fell over her expression as the memory was dredged up. Naruto, Hinata, and she, along with another Hyuga, she thinks, had been on their way back to the compound after spending time in the park when Naruto had taken notice of something in a shop's window. A stuffed animal, a fox. Ironically enough, the boy had such a longing look on his face that Sarah knew she would have felt guilty if she didn't try to get it for him. She had told Hinata and Ko to wait outside while she and Naruto went inside to retrieve the item, even asked the girl if there was anything she wanted. The stuffed rabbit next to the fox had caught the girl's attention. The moment the two had stepped inside the store was when the trouble began. Sarah was proud to be a child of Konoha. She was proud to be a shinobi in service to the village. She praised her ancestors for having the wisdom to settle in Konoha in its early years. She loved her village and would give her life to defend it just as easily she would for her clan. But even she had to face reality and acknowledge that the village was not without its faults. The same could be said about her clan, but that was getting off topic. She knew how the rest of the village viewed and treated her charge. She couldn't blame them either. It was hard to separate the boy from the demon he contained, and humans were irrational beings after all. The orphanage aside, ignoring the child's existence had been the worst offense against him. Certainly, Konoha treated its Jinchuriki better than other villages. The rumors out of Suna alone made her question if humans were any better than the supposed demons they feared. The store owner had been friendly to them for all 3 seconds. Then his eyes went past her and narrowed in on her charge. Never in her life had she seen so much hate and fury in someone's eyes. Not even the many opponents she had faced in her career came close. The few moments were a blur of shouting between the two, mostly the man shouting, "Demon child," and other things she was loath to repeat in front of anyone, let alone a child. Several times he reached for Naruto, fully intending to harm him, with her stopping him using more force than the last. The result was that she and Naruto leaving the store with the latter almost on the verge of tears, and the store owner left unconscious via several Juken strikes. On their way back, Sarah had her Byakugan on the whole way and a deathly aura around her that dared anyone to strike at her charge. A few hours later, Anbu arrived at the Hyuga compound. The man had pressed charges against her and Naruto for assaulting him in unprovoked manure. "Yes, I remember that too," she said after a moment. "I never thought someone could be so cruel to a child. Nor did I think they would be so devoid of intelligence to attack a Hyuga." She got a simple nodded in response to her statement. Fortunately for all involved, that matter was resolved. Sarah smiled to herself at the bright side of the memory. The testimonies of Hinata and Ko had cleared them of any wrongdoing, especially when they had been backed by the support of Hiashi. The charges had been dropped, and the store owner was forced to leave. Otherwise, he would be charged with falsely accusing a shinobi of Konoha, attempted assault of a shinobi of Konoha, and attempted assault of a Konoha citizen, hefty charges that all would have seen the man pay heavy fines and had him locked up for years. That had been the beginning of his bad luck, as the elders, feeling like the clan had been slighted, had blacklisted the store. Within a week, the man had been forced to shut down his business and left the village by the end of the month. She had never returned to that street, making a point to avoid it. "I don't think I can ever thank you enough, Hiashi-sama, for backing Naruto and me," she said. "Hinata-sama's and Ko-san's testimony alone would have cleared us. You didn't have to involve yourself." She samed the clan head small. "But I did, and as clan head, I had to," he replied. The man was challenging the Hyuga clan whether he realized it or not. "Plus, my daughter was involved as well." Sarah nodded her understanding. "Still, I thank you." The group rounded a corner. "Now that young Naruto will be attending the academy, you will find yourself with more time." Hiashi began. "What will you be doing now that your schedule has opened?" he asked. That was something she had been asking herself when she realized what it meant for her that Naruto would be at the academy. As her clan head pointed out, she would have a lot more time to herself as Naruto would be at the academy training to be shinobi. Sure, she still would be expected to carry out her duties as his caretaker, and she was more than happy to do so. But with each passing day, month, and year getting closer to the day he graduated and became a full shinobi of Konoha, Naruto would be expected to become more independent. Start to care for himself. In time, Sarah would be expected to move out and return to her former residence, occasionally checking in on the boy as her role would never come to an end, just lessened. She felt conflicted. On one hand, she was overjoyed to have more time to herself. She had learned that caring for a child was a time-consuming and tiring affair. It didn't help that Naruto was more troublesome than most children. Shit, she was starting to sound like a Nara. On the other end, she found her role to be strangely fulfilling. She viewed the blonde as the little brother she never had, and caring for him had made her wonder what it would be like to be an actual mother. She never really put much thought into it before, and on the rare occasion she did, it always seemed unappealing to her. Now though, she was uncertain. She had much to think about and soon would have the time to think about it. "I am not certain, Hiashi-sama." She spoke the truth. "There's much to consider for my future." She saw the clan head give her a critical look that made her shift nervously. "That I can understand. he said after a moment. Though I assume that you will be resuming your duties as a full-time kunoichi. Now that much she was certain of. Of course, Hiyashi-sama, while I am happy to be Naruto-kun's caretaker, I am eager to resume my responsibilities as a kunoichi of the village. She said with honesty while the possibility of her wanting to be a mother was uncertain, and far she knew clearly that she wanted to continue her career as a kunoichi and take as far as her ability allowed her to. For obvious reasons, I can't do that this year or even the next, but maybe in 6 months, depending on how well Naruto-kun is doing in the academy, I may start doing some missions to ease myself back in. Most likely, they will be simple C ranks that won't take me out of the village for more than a few days, a week at most. She explained, she would be training harder now to sharpen her skills. That's good to hear, Hiyashi responded, bringing his hand to his chin. I do feel a bit guilty that we had to assign you to Naruto-san at a time when your career was just starting to take off. I imagine that did not sit well with you at the time. At the time, yes. She admitted. But I have long since gotten over it. Reflecting on it now, it may have been a good thing for me in the long run. Remaining here in the village for the past 2 years has allowed me to hone my skills and develop my technique. Sometimes it is best to slow down rather than rush ahead. That is one of the lessons of the Sandaime, is it not? Hiyashi nodded, seemingly pleased. That is good to hear, you were becoming one of Konoha's best, and I am glad your drive has not diminished. He said, though it's not like you have allowed yourself to grow lax in your as others would. I have seen you training hard, and there is no shortage of sparing partners in the village. It doesn't hurt that my charge is a training nut. She said with a smile. That boy can give our resident, Green Beast, a run for his money in the enthusiasm department. She shudders to think what would happen if the two ever met. Still, I look forward to seeing your progress as a kunoichi. The group came to a stop in front of a double set of sliding doors, the entrance to the Elder Council's chamber. Hiyashi turned to face her. Once the children are done meeting with the elders, you will escort them to the academy. Unfortunately, my responsibilities as clan head will keep me from taking Hinata to the academy on her first day. Kurenai will be arriving shortly to take Hinata. Nodding her understanding, Sarah saw a flash of disappointment on Hinata's face. Understandable, a child should be with their parent on a special day like this, but he was a clan head. More times than he liked, he couldn't be there for his daughter. Her mother was still recovering with expressed orders that she not leave the compound for at least a month. It was a wonder that she was even walking with them now. At least they got someone close to Hinata to fulfill that role. Yes, Hiyashi-sama, she said with a bow before turning her attention to her charge. Now, Naruto, do please try to behave in there. The elders are not accustomed to your unique brand of respect. She said sternly. If he had been able to, Sarah was certain that he would be rolling his eyes. Instead, he settles for the ones that float around him. Yes, Sarah-chan, I'll behave. He said, sounding like a child whose fun had just been ruined. She turned to look at Hinata. Hinata-sama, please make sure he behaves himself. She said with a small smile. Hinata returned the smile. I'll try. She giggled out. Naruto looked between the two females, an incredulous look on his face. Does no one have faith in me? He said. Not much. Hitomi, Hinata, and Sarah deadpanned, causing the boy to slump. What is this pick on Naruto Day? He said, exasperated. I believe that's next week. Hiyashi commented with a straight face, getting a chuckle from the three females. Naruto just glared at the man. Now, I do believe we made the elders wait long enough. He said, opening the doors and ushering the others in. Sarah-san, have a good day. He said before closing the day. Sarah silently bowed in front of the door before moving away from it and stood at the wall opposite of it. He would wait for her charge and Hinata to come out and take them to the academy. In the meantime, perhaps she could use this small amount of time to think about her future. Uchiha compound. Remember, Sasuke, you must show the strength of the Uchiha clan while you attend the academy. Yes, father, Sasuke said to his father. He saw his father give a grim nod. Then you are dismissed. Your brother will be taking you to the academy, he said, raising his mother close behind him, a look of disappointment on her face. Sasuke felt a small jolt of surprise. He had hoped that his father would be the one taking him to the academy. Father, why aren't you taking me? He said before he could stop himself. His father looked at him, seemingly annoyed at his youngest son's outburst. As the clan head, I am far too busy to take you myself. You should understand by now I cannot indulge in every childish whim you come up with. His voice coming out harshly in Sasuke's ears. Now go, it would not look well upon the clan for one of my sons to be late on his first day. He left, leaving a disappointed Sasuke. His mother stood in front of him. Don't worry about him, Sasuke-kun. She soothingly said. Your father is a busy man. I'm sure if he could, he would take all the time in the world to be with you. Sasuke didn't say anything as he stood up and began to walk into the room his mother closed behind. His brother was waiting for him outside. I assume that father did not wish to take you to the academy, he said. No, he doesn't, Sasuke said, feeling hurt at saying the words. He had hoped to spend some time with his father, however small it was. It wasn't fair his father paid more attention to Itachi than him. Unlike him, his brother was a prodigy without equal. He had graduated from the academy at the age of 7 and made Chunin 3 years later, and a year late made Anbu. If rumors were to be believed, he would be a new captain soon. Sasuke loved his older brother, he truly did. Itachi was more like a father to him than his own, but he felt jealous of him. For once, he would like to be the center of attention, to have everyone's eyes on him. Deep down, he knew he would never shape up, and it. His train of thought came to a crashing stop when he felt his brother poke him in the forehead. Covering his head with hands, he shot a glare that would melt the Hokage moment at Itachi. What was that for? He questioned, his voice sounding whinier than he intended. He saw his brother give him a small smile. You were getting angst, dear little brother, he said calmly. No, I wasn't, Sasuke retorted, feeling his cheeks heat up. Oh yes, you were, came a familiar voice. The group turned to face the newcomer. Shisui stopped in front of them. You could feel that angst from halfway across the compound, he said with a laugh. Sasuke puffed out his chest, feeling more than a bit annoyed. I'm not angst, he said, fighting back a smile. Come, little guy, cheer up, it's your first day at the academy, Shisui said, patting Sasuke on the head. You even get to have your awesome brother to take you there. He's right, Sasuke-kun. This is your special day. His mother interjected. You'll find that your days at the academy will be some of the best in your life. Oh, I remember my days in the academy there. I met some of the best people that would become my friends and comrades in arms. Your friends? Sasuke asked, wanting to learn more about his mother. Itachi and Shisui were listening closely as well. Yes, such as your father's teammates and friends Hyuga Hiashi and Namikaze Minato. Of course, there was my generation's Inoshika Cho trio. Wait, my father was friends with a Hyuga? Sasuke said, disbelieving that an Uchiha and Hyuga could ever get along. Wasn't Namikaze the Yondaime? His brother queried. Sasuke's eyes widened as he looked between his brother and mother. His father had been friends with a Hyuga and a Hokage. Yes, indeed he was. The Uchiha matriarch confirmed. They were some of the closest friends you ever met and were a formidable force together under their sensei Jiraiya. They heard Shisui whistle. That's impressive. The current clan heads of the Uchiha and Hyuga clans, and the Yondaime together under one of the Sannin. That's a wicked combination. I ever heard one. Again, Sasuke felt his head spin. His father had trained under one of the Sannin. He had been teammates and friends with the current Hyuga clan head and with the deceased Yondaime. He was learning more about his father than he ever had in his life, and it was all hard to keep up with. Indeed, at the time, they were and still are considered to be one of Konoha's deadliest teams. Some even liken it to a second coming of the Sannin. his mother explained with a nostalgic smile. My team was also considered to be a close contender. Funny enough, my teammates were Hiyashi's wife Hitomi and Kushina, a close friend of the Yondaime. Our sensei was Tsunade. Funny how fate works out sometimes. You mentioned someone named Kushina, Itachi said. I'm afraid I have not heard of her. If she was your teammate, why have you not mentioned her until now? He asked with an analytical eye. All three Uchiha males saw the woman's happy smile morph into a sad and somber one. Really? I haven't. A small chuckle escaped her lips. Funny, if she were here now, she would get onto me about not talking about her. She would probably punish me by telling you an embarrassing story. My guess would be that one time in Suna. If she was still here. Shisui asked, though it sounded like he already knew the answer. She died defending the village during the Kyuubi attack 7 years ago. Her body was found lying beside the Yondaime's. I lost 2 good friends that day. Tears started to stream down her reddening cheeks. She brought her sleeve up to wipe her eyes. I'm sorry if I'm getting emotional here. I'm bringing the mood down. It's just thinking about that night is hard. I guess maybe that's why I haven't talked about her. I apologize if I made you uncomfortable, Mother, Itachi said, sounding guilty. I was merely curious about why you had not talked about your friend before. It's all right, Itachi-kun, I know you didn't mean to. She said. Funny enough, though, it feels good to be talking about her. Maybe once Sasuke returns to the compound, I'll tell you 3 more about her. That would be interesting to hear more about it, Itachi said. I wouldn't mind learning more about my father and his team. The man has always been withdrawn about details about himself. Sasuke nodded his head. Me too. He was eager to learn more about his father and his teammates. I'll think about it, their mother responded. But I've gotten off topic. The point is, your time in the academy will be something you always remember. The people you will meet there will become your friends, comrades in arms, and 2 lucky ones will become your teammates. Those 2 you will feel the closest to, sometimes feeling like they are family and sometimes even closer than that. Sasuke didn't know how to respond to that. He learned a lot about his parents in his mother's brief explanation. More than he ever thought he would learn, and once he got back from the academy, he would learn more. Then there was what his mother said about his time in the academy. He wondered if what his mother said was true, that he would find people that he would come to trust more than his own family. Would that really happen with him? Was his mother exaggerating and that her experience was out of the norm? Well, only one way to find out. And on that note, I believe it's time that Itachi got you to the academy. His mother said, clapping her hands together. Your father wouldn't like to hear about how his son was late on his first day. Nor would I. Sasuke, promise me you'll be a good boy. I will, Mother. Sasuke said. I promise. Come, little brother, it's time we left. Itachi said, beckoning Sasuke to follow as he walked down the hall. Shisui walked up beside Itachi. Mind if I tag along? I finished training a while ago and got some down before I head for the mission boards. I don't mind if Sasuke doesn't. Itachi responded. Shisui looked to the younger Uchiha for his answer. Sasuke shrugged his shoulders. I don't mind. Shisui was a nice guy to be around and was Itachi's closest friend. It would be nice to spend some time around the both of them. Then let's get going, Shisui said as they left the compound. Konoha streets. In Shisui's opinion, it was always nice to walk down the streets of Konoha instead of jumping from rooftop to rooftop. Granted, as a shinobi, he did it frequently during missions, and there was a certain thrill in seeing each street. Its inhabitants rapidly disappear in single bounds. But doing that never gave one the impression of how lively the village was if they had walked instead. Whenever he wasn't on a mission or had a mission that wasn't constrained by time, he would stroll down the streets taking his time to admire the hassle and bustle of life that was life in Konoha. There always seemed to be something happening. People walked up and down the street, children weaved through the crowds playing and laughing, and he would pass by dozens of shops offering a wide range of wares. Most were normal ordinary things that one would expect to find at a shop. Some offered rarer or exotic items if you knew where to look and were willing to pay a hefty price. Others, though, had strange things. One time, he bought a supposedly haunted mask. It was a creepy little thing, so he could sort of see why some would think that. He bought it so he could try giving Itachi a good scare. That didn't pan out as he thought it. Nothing could get past that guy. Funny enough, soon after he discovered the mask had a seal etched into that when it was worn, it induced a slight genjutsu that heightened the wearer's paranoia. That would explain its haunted origins. Getting back on track, walking down the streets on Konoha was always an interesting affair. Today wasn't any different, considering that 3 Uchihas were walking down the street. That alone was usually enough to get people to notice them. But 2 of them were the sons of Fugaku, the clan head of the Uchiha, one of which was hailed as a prodigy of unmatched caliber. The third of the group was one of the strongest shinobi in Konoha, having earned the moniker of Shunshin no Shisui. A lot more people were paying attention and whispering among themselves. Some in awe and reverence. Isn't that Itachi? Yay, it is. He's a genius, and he's with Shunshin no Shisui. Who's the kid with them? Wait, could he be Itachi's little brother? I think you're right. I bet he's every bit the prodigy his brother is. Fugaku-sama must be so proud. Shisui rolled his eyes at the civilians, idle praise of them. They didn't see them as individuals, only their last names and who they were related to. Others, though, were concerning. What are Uchiha doing out here? What wrong with that? Haven't you heard the rumors? Shisui hid his discomfort as he noticed not everyone was looking at them favorably. It was a recent trend in the last few years, one that had almost gone unnoticed, but tensions were rising between the Uchiha clan and the village. No one quite knew where or when it started, but the result was that the clan was slowly being isolated from the village. The Uchiha, as some would correctly guess, were not taking this well. Most disturbing were the rumors that his clan was somehow responsible for the Kyuubi attack 7 years ago, which had cropped up recently. Every day more and more people were viewing him and his clan with suspicion. If this kept up, he feared for the future relations between the clan and the village. All this had gone unnoticed by Sasuke as he was escorted to the academy. Coming to the academy building, they noticed a booth had been set up at the front entrance. A small group of people was waiting at it, children, and their parents. Almost all of them were nothing notable, most likely were civilians or from minor shinobi families. 4, however, did catch his eye, 2 women and 2 children around Sasuke's age. One was a young woman with black hair, red eyes, and clothes that looked more like wrappings. The other woman appeared to be around his age and had brown hair that stopped around her shoulders. Most notably about her were her eyes that made her look like a blind person. Based on her rather stern and cold exterior, Shisui surmised that she was a Hyuga and one of the main house, judging by the lack of a certain seal. One of the children was also a Hyuga, a girl with dark blue hair. She was shyly, was that even possible for a Hyuga? Clinging to the 4th member of the group and the one that stood out the most. A boy with hair that spiked in every direction and seemed to be blessed by the sun, and around where his eyes should be was a dark orange cloth wrapped around his head. The Uchiha stopped behind the group of 4, getting their attention. The red-eyed woman was friendly enough as she gave the group a respectful and friendly smile. Itachi-san, I haven't seen you in a while, she said. It's good to see you as well, Yuhi-san, Itachi replied. My duties in Anbu have kept me busy, so you have not seen me as often. Shisui looked to his best friend. You know this lady? He asked him. Itachi nodded. This is Yuhi Kurenai. We met when we were paired together for a mission. She is a very skilled genjutsu user. Itachi said. Shishu arched an eyebrow. He knew Itachi was an honest person, seeing no need to lie when it wasn't necessary. So, when he said this woman was skilled in genjutsu, and keep in mind he was considered a master in the field that some say couldn't be beaten, he meant it, and it said a lot about her skill. You flatter me, Itachi-san. Hearing you speak highly of my skill in genjutsu is quite the honor. The woman said. Though I still feel that I can't hold a candle next to you. Itachi shook his head. I only speak the truth. Kurenai-san, I respect your skill as the genjutsu mistress of Konoha. You should not compare yourself to me. He said, getting a grateful nod from the woman. Perhaps we can have a spare some time. A battle of genjutsus to see how much I've improved since I last saw you. Kurenai suggested. I will think about it. Itachi replied. At the moment, I have to take my brother, he gestured to Sasuke, to the academy, and you have yet to introduce me to the rest of your friends. Shisui saw the Kurenai shift in embarrassment. Oh, where are my manners? Shisui waved her off. It's alright, Yuhi-san, he hasn't introduced me and his brother either. So that makes you two even. He said to her, calming her. I'm Uchiha Shisui, and as Itachi-san said a second ago, this is Itachi's little brother Sasuke. He said, gesturing to the boy in their group who stood at attention. Hi, he said. Uchiha Shisui. The Hyuga woman queried. As in Shunshin no Shisui. She continued, a bit of awe in her voice, and was that a hint of blush he saw? Why yes, I am. And you are, he said, noting her reaction. Ah, of course, how rude of me. I am Hyuga Sarah, she said with a respectful bow. I apologize for any offense. I was just surprised to meet two of the village's most notable shinobi. You and Itachi-san have made names for yourselves more so than most Uchiha. Shisui waved her off. I'm not offended. You said your name was Sarah. Correct. He got a nod. I'm sorry to say I haven't heard of you. You a shinobi? Chunin, Sarah replied. Could have been a jonin by now, if it were not for my current assignment. Current assignment? Shisui inquired with a raised eyebrow. An assignment from Hiyashi-sama and the Hyuga Elder Council that has taken me off of active duty. Sarah began. For the last 2 years, I have been charged with the care of our ward, Uzumaki Naruto. She motioned towards the blonde-haired boy. The now named Naruto gave the Uchihas an energetic bow. Hi, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, soon to be the greatest shinobi in the world and future Hokage of the Leaf. It's nice to meet you. He introduced himself loudly. So, this is our resident Jinchuriki. As a member of Anbu, he was entrusted with certain secrets. He noted the small eye roll Sarah gave the boy. I had heard that the Hyuga clan had taken an orphan in as a clan ward. Something about repaying a debt they owed him. Shisui commented. It's nice to meet you too. He extends his hand to the boy. The boy grasped it and gave it a good shake. That's because I saved Hinata Haim, he said, letting go. Hinata Haim, Shisui said, masking a smirking, seeing the Hyuga girl next to him turn a bright shade of red. Hiyashi's daughter and current heir to the Hyuga clan. The boy opened his mouth to explain. Yay, Hinata Haim. He grabbed the after-mentioned girl and pulled her in close, getting an ep from her and causing her to turn several shades redder. She's awesome and the nicest person I know. Introduce yourself, Hinata. Shisui saw the girl fidget in the boy's grasp. Hi. It's ni ce to me meet you. I'm Hyuuga Hinata. She stuttered out, doing her best to maintain eye contact. Wow. Shisui was seeing all sorts of new things today. Are these two always like this? Itachi asked the question that was on Shisui's mind. He had a small, amused smile on his face. Sarah brought a hand to her exasperated head shake. Though by the smile on her lips, she found the exchange to be entertaining. I'm afraid so, she said, though Hinata is usually well behaved and has a talent for keeping this one in check. She pointed her thumb at the boy who just waved. Though you can imagine he's handful at the best of times and a downright nuisance at worst, and I have to deal with him every night. Hey, I'm not that bad, the blindfolded boy said incredulously. Oh, yes you are. I swear every night, I find more gray hairs than I started with. That's because you're getting old. The Uchihas felt a spike of killing intent. Thump. Naruto was left nursing a bump on his head. Did you have to hit that hard? He complained. You know I didn't mean it. Hinata was giving the boy a worried look while trying to suppress a giggle. HMPH, Sarah huffed out. Of course, I did. You should never call a lady old and rude. Plus, you have a thick skull. It is about the only way for things to get through to you, she said, examining her nails. Shisui felt a bit of sweat rolling down his head. These two act like their brother and sister. He thought to himself. I can see that you have your hands full, he said, making mental noted to never get on the woman's bad side, a general rule of thumb regarding women, especially if they were kunoichi. I get by, she stated with a blank face. But, a caring smile crept in. Despite his shortcomings, he is a good kid with a good heart. Otherwise, he would have not put himself in danger to save Hinata-sama. So, I suppose that looking after him isn't entirely a bad thing. Admit it, you like me, Naruto said, getting an eye roll. I only spoke the truth. My feelings have no bearing on the matter, Sarah said. You didn't deny it. Shisui turned to Kurenai. The woman had an amused smirk. Tell me, are these two always like this? He asked her. Like you wouldn't believe it, she said in mock exasperation. If I didn't know better, you'd think they were brother and sister. I can see that, Shisui commented, keeping an eye on the two as they continued their banter. Shisui was about to interrupt them when another voice joined in. What's with the blindfold? Sasuke asked. Are you blind or something? The banter between Sarah and Naruto came to an end as they stared at the youngest Uchiha. Sasuke, Itachi warned. I believe that's not something you should be asking. Why? Sasuke asked, looking at his brother. I'm sure you and Shisui are wondering too. So why not ask? Shisui was not curious about the boy's blindfold. He had read the reports on the Hyuga affair 2 years ago and knew why the boy wore a blindfold. That is because you are asking a personal question. Itachi tried to explain. How would you like it if he asked you a question like that? But I'm not the one wearing a blindfold, he is, Sasuke said. That's not the point, Sasuke, Itachi replied. What you are asking is a personal question for someone you just met. It's rude, and you should apologize. But, no buts, Sasuke apologize, Itachi said with an iron voice. Sasuke grumbled. He turned to face Naruto. I'm sorry for asking a personal question. Please forgive me if I offend you in some way, he said. I too apologize, Uzumaki-san, Itachi added in. My brother meant no disrespect. I believe he was just curious and had not thought it would be rude to ask you. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. It's alright. I forgive you. I figured the question was going to come up at one point or another, he explained. Most likely when we were in the classroom. So, it won't hurt to tell you now. Shisui had not taken that into account. If Sasuke asked, then the other children would too, and odds were that they would be less polite about it. I assume it has something to do with the Hyuga affair 2 years ago, Itachi said. Hyuga affair? Sasuke asked. What's the Hyuga affair? Shisui was the one to explain. 2 years ago, while under the pretense of making a peace treaty, the head of the Kumo delegation attempted to kidnap the heiress of the Hyuga clan. He noted the way Hinata fidgeted and how Naruto took a protective step towards her. He didn't like that he was bringing up bad memories for the girl. The attempt failed due to the interference of a street orphan. The heiress was rescued, and the man brought into custody. While there, after a brief interrogation, he confessed to his crimes and admitted that Kumo had planned it. To repay the debt they owed to the orphan, the Hyuga clan took him in as a ward. It was a short and simplified version of the story, one that most in Konoha would know. What he didn't mention was that the man was handed back to his village, where if intel was correct, he had been executed soon after. The peace treaty had held, but relations between Konoha and Kumo had turned icy and were steadily sliding in the negative direction. Nor was it known that the boy had awoken a new power, not publicly anyway. He's that orphan, Sasuke guessed while pointing at the blonde. That's right, Sarah chimed in. Thanks to his heroic, Shisui heard her mutter, and reckless, under her breath, actions our heiress Hinata-sama was saved that night. Shisui and Itachi noticed the odd look in Sasuke's eyes. You fought a Kumo nin? He asked in disbelief. Yay, I did, Naruto boasted. Naruto, Sarah said. The blindfolded boy deflated somewhat and scratched his whiskered cheek. Well, more like I was a nuisance and got my ass handed to me. He admitted. But I still saved Hinata. He quickly added. But what does that have to do with you having a blindfold? Sasuke asked, the awe still present but more restrained. I was getting to that. Naruto said. Well, as it turns out, the bastard. Language Naruto. Sarah cut in. Naruto ignored her. Was a sick and vindictive type. He cut my eyes out. Shisui knew this from the reports of that night. It still left his stomach twisting. He glanced at Itachi in time to see a rare and terrifying sight, an angry Itachi. Shisui could count on one hand the number of times he had seen Itachi angry, and the perpetrators didn't get to tell the story. Just as quickly it was there, it was gone. He cut your eyes out, Sasuke said, looking a little green in the face. He did, Naruto said, untying the blindfold and taking it off. Shisui had seen some messed up stuff in his life, things that would haunt his dreams on bad nights. But most of them never gave him the bone-chilling feeling like seeing a smiling blonde with an empty set of eye sockets. He was certain that he would be seeing that in his sleep tonight, as would Sasuke. Shisui had to commend the younger brother of his best friend for not reacting any worse than he was. His expression was a mixture of disgust and fear and maybe a bit of sympathy. That's horrible, Sasuke said after a moment. Naruto nodded, putting the blindfold back on. It was. I fainted from the pain when he was done. I woke in the hospital with Gigi and Hinata, and her dad in my room. The rest, you know. Naruto said. Well, except for one thing. Naruto added with a smirk. What? Sasuke pressed. I got back at him. Naruto said as a pair of eyes float down in front of him.